because my trial of Wirecast just went out, but I'm switching back to Wirecast. It's
Sweet.
Wirecast. It's so much better than everything. It's like $250 for the version that I
Yeah.
would be using, but like it's worth it. It's
Okay.
worth it.
Okay.
The encoding is better. I just went back to OBS. They have way more features, way more options, and you can like broadcast like two people at once. You can do the interview within that software.
Right.
So it's just better
Oh,
overall.
look at that. And we're live. We're right here. All right. Hello, guys. Thank you very much for everyone who's joining us today live. Thank you very much to everyone who's going to be watching later as well. Today, I'm really looking forward to this episode because, ever since I've come here, I've developed a pretty keen interest in American politics, and I've been watching Niko's videos for a while, and I've really enjoyed his perspective. And I think there's not as many people like him on the internet as you would think. So I'm very excited to get cracking with this conversation. First and foremost, please welcome to the show, Niko House. Hi, Niko.
Thanks, man. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I appreciate you having me on.
No, absolutely. And like I said again, I've really been having fun watching your videos. I've been having fun watching your perspective on things because one of the things, like we were talking about, just before we went live as well, one of the things that has happened in the past few years, not just in the US, but I feel like around the world in terms of politics, that it's become a little bit more partisan. And I know social media is to blame for a large percentage of it, but there's a strong level of tribalism in politics today where you have to, no matter what, defend your quote unquote side. Whatever side you might be on, you have to defend it. They can do no wrong. And sometimes that can lead to very unhealthy political discussions and a very unhealthy political situation. But you're a little refreshing in the sense that you are not beholden to those tribal affiliations. If there's something that bothers you about what quote unquote your side is doing, you'll say, yeah, I don't think that's right. And why do you think that tribalism exists today?
Well, it's because, in my opinion, it's easier. It
That's true.
simplifies the entire political process. It feels good to know that, like, no matter what you say or what you do, everyone's going to agree with you. And it's instead of dealing with the intricacies and the foundational breakdowns of the system, you just point at a person or you point at a team. Or like, for example, I'm a New York Knicks fan, unfortunately, right? It's super easy. Whenever Kristaps Porzingis wanted to be traded,
Right.
everybody freaked out. They just said it's KP's fault. He's a traitor. But it takes a little bit. If you understand the Knicks, then you know it's not KP's fault. Our system is broken. James Dolan is trash. He's out here kicking former Knicks players out of the arena, banning fans. We have a systemic problem, and it starts, like most things, with the billionaires and how they run things. And so they always, and as it's like in basketball, they always say championships start at the top. It's the same thing when it comes to politics. It starts at the top, but it seems like defeating or overcoming those billionaires or the elites or the system is so overwhelming that they feel like if they point at the GOP or if they point at this person or point at that person and align themselves with somebody in every situation, like if you're a Democrat, you want to align with them in every situation. If you like AOC or Bernie or Tulsi, you align with them in every situation. That it's easier for them to comprehend and then just become an attack dog. But in my opinion, that's how we've gotten to the point where we're at, like where nobody saw Trump coming. And I was one of the very first people in March of 2016, even a little bit before that. But whenever I first did my first Facebook Live videos, I was like, I hate to break this to y'all, but when you skip steps in democracy, problems happen.
Yeah.
We saw it happen with Harry Truman Henry Truman, right? Harry Truman after Henry Wallace was cheated out of the vice presidential spot after being FDR's vice president for his first 3 terms. We saw two nuclear bomb drop, and the Cold War started because of that.
Yeah.
We saw that happen with Donald Trump because Hillary Clinton was never the nominee. She lost in the actual election, even though she tried to cheat, and even with the cheating, she still really lost. But then when we got to the convention, and I was there, she lost in 2 rounds of delegate voting.
Yeah.
But they were never going to give Bernie Sanders that spot. So when you cheat democracy, you end up with Trump.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people were voting based off of who they thought was best equipped to beat Trump. And so when you cheat your entire party, you think that people aren't paying attention. This is the primary. Primary is different than the general. The general is full of casual voters. The primary is not. The primaries are full of people who are paying attention basically from the beginning until the end of that primary. And so they're paying close attention to how you conduct business. And if you are not representative of their values and their belief system, they'll just leave the party.
Yeah.
Or they'll stay in the party and you will have you'll think that they're voting for you, but they're not. So your numbers become skewed because that happens in close primary states.
Right. Yeah, it is very interesting. It is very interesting to see that kind of partisanship. And I think, the emergence of you and the emergence of, I feel like, some other progressive voices kind of goes to show that maybe at least on the ground, some people are getting a little bit of sick of that partisanship. And they're feeling like, we need to kind of at least try to do what's right rather than just try to do what we quote unquote need to do, or what our party feels like it needs to do. And what has been your sort of reading of the last 3 years of, I think, Trump's rule ever since the election, and which way politics has gone? Do you feel like Democrats have made the right noises, they're taking the right steps to sort of correct the situation that happened in 2016? Or do you think...
No, hell no. No, hell no. They are still straddling the fence, and the sad part is they're only straddling the fence nominally, right? So we were just talking about the fact that all of a sudden Kamala Harris cares about Medicare for all.
Yeah.
But she doesn't. Like literally the day after the town hall, the first town hall she had, because she said, let me look at me in my eyes when I'm telling you this. Healthcare is a human right. And then her strategist the next day. I mean, but Kamala is actually for all the different healthcare. I mean, just put one in front of her. She'll vote for it. She will. She'll vote for any of it. She doesn't want to abolish. The next morning, it wasn't even a 24-hour turnover.
Right.
Elizabeth Warren, the day she announced, backtracked on Medicare for all. The day she announced. And then she said, I'm not going to take money during the primary, but I'm going to take all the money I can get during the general.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
And it's so obvious, and it's almost like they think that we're just that stupid, which is kind of insulting at this point. And then you still have them trying to, like, Bernie is about the closest they're going to get to not having a revolution, because Bernie's going to win. I endorse Tulsi, but Bernie's going to win at the rate that we're looking like. Unless the debates happen and something extravagant happens, which I actually think is going to be the case. But it'll either be Bernie or Tulsi, but Bernie's the better bet for the establishment, because Bernie is unfortunately ignorant on foreign policy. He just doesn't get it. He is way too trusting of the the intelligence community.
Right.
And so instead of pushing him and then trying to exact control on that administration, which unfortunately I feel like he would be susceptible to, they're instead smearing him too.
Yeah.
Which is just galvanizing his base even more. Every time they smear him, he gets more money.
Right.
It's like they nominally made steps.
Yeah.
They tried to make positive steps toward their brand, but they still don't get it.
Right.
They just don't get it. And I think it's just, in my opinion, it's representative of the fact that you don't have to be smart or intelligent to work in politics.
Right.
You just have to kind of be able to play ball. If you know how to play, in fact, they prefer not being smart. Like I said, they've always preferred presidents who cheered on great domestic policies, and they'll let you have domestic policy, but you're not allowed to have foreign policy.
Yeah. And
they will purposely select a moron on foreign policy, so that, like with FDR, right? We always call him other than Lincoln, he was the most popular president at the time. And we always cheer on FDR Democrats. You know, the problem with the FDR Democrats, people forget the other half of that New Deal, like how we ended up in war, how we completely ignored the Holocaust. We actually turned away Jewish people when we finally did enter the war. We didn't actually step foot onto European battlegrounds until 2 years in. Instead, we spent most of our time defending Great Britain's colonies in Africa. Yeah. Like, we were played for fools.
Yeah.
And it was because FDR, not necessarily to any fault of his own, was just he did not understand foreign policy.
Right.
And so that's what happens. I just don't feel like, they're setting themselves up.
What's Bernie's sort of stance on foreign policy in general?
He claims to be anti-interventionist.
Okay.
But his foreign policy is up and down, actually, and a lot of people who are like his staunch supporters. So I obviously, I used to work for Bernie Sanders. I was the president. I was the president of Carolina Students for Bernie Sanders at UNC. Wow. I was also the president for North Carolina colleges for Bernie Sanders. I was also the acting state director for North Carolina. Yeah, all that at once. It was miserable. I mean, it was a great time. Learned a lot. Right. It was wild, though.
I can imagine, man.
But before I work with or for anybody, before I even openly support anybody, the first thing I do is research on them. I do extensive research because I got to know how you gonna break my heart. I got to know this. It's like when you meet a girl or a guy you like and you go stalking their Instagram and for ex-girlfriends or ex-boyfriends. You see bad habits that you need to look out for. Like, that's what I do, because at the end of the day, you're a politician, and even more so, you're a human being who makes mistakes. And I'm okay with that. I just need to know what those mistakes are. So, like, I knew that Bernie had an Israel problem. He did, and he's evolved on it, but only within the last 6 or 7 months. Right. Or I got to be fair, about the last year, he finally started calling on Netanyahu. So, but he also voted to do regime change in Kosovo. He also voted for regime. He voted for another soft regime change. I can't remember what country it was, but he voted for another soft regime change. Like, he voted to bomb Gaza. Like, and defended it, like, very staunchly. Like, he has a foreign policy problem, and he always focuses on Iraq, right? Always, like, I voted against Iraq. I voted, okay, like, it was obvious. It was a lie. The United Nations made it pretty clear to the rest of the world, which is why the rest of the world wouldn't join in on the war. What are you talking about? This is bullshit. There's no weapons of mass destruction. So, like, you didn't really do anything that was, like, uber impressive. But when it came to Afghanistan, you voted to give the president damn near unlimited power. Even though we knew for a fact Osama and Al-Qaeda was a product of Saudi Arabia. We knew this because the CIA trained Osama. So, like, you didn't, like, so your solution to finding Osama was, let's go obliterate Afghanistan? Like, and it's crazy because I'm saying it and it seems like, oh yeah, well, that's stupid. Why do we do that? I know.
But that's what we did,
That's exactly what we literally went in we obliterate, because, like, you know how Afghanistan is a weird type of country where it's not really organized. They're tribalist. And we just obliterated it. And it's crazy to me because I don't know if you know who Cat Williams is, but he's kind of like Kevin Hart before Kevin Hart. And he said something that was so blatantly true. And I watched the special again within the last week or so, and I was like, oh my God, that was more true than I cared to realize. He said the government they're bullies. He said we just bully countries. He said, say our name 3 times, bitch, and watch what happens. And then he said, seriously, I was like, damn. And he was like, he said, and what they do to keep the people complacent is they use words that Americans can't readily identify. He says, today we killed a group of insurgents. And he's like, don't know fucking insurgents. I don't have not one insurgent friend. You can kill all of them. Like, that's what they do. And he was like, think about it. He says, what does the Afghanistan or Iraqi uniform looks like? He said, you don't know because you've never seen it, because we're not killing their army, we are killing them. He said, we're killing women, children, babies. We're killing guys out there in flip-flops and a cowboy hat. Like, we're not attacking armies. And I can guarantee that 98% of them have no idea what these uniforms look, because in Afghanistan, they don't exist. Who are we blowing up? To go. And so with Bernie, in my opinion, like, I'm 29 now, I'm 30 now, but like at 27, 28 years old, I could see, like, okay, there's clearly something wrong with this. When I was in the army from the time I was 19 years old till I was 23. I could see that I refused to deploy because I knew, like, I'm not playing that game. So, and I knew this. So, but Bernie, having all his experience, being anti-war for damn near most of his life, that frustrated me to see, like, how susceptible he is to the corruption of the laws of the intelligence agencies that has always been guided by hyper neoconservatives who have been obsessed with regime change and obsessed with war. Like George Bush Sr., his father was like one of the originators of the War Industry Advisory Board that was made after World War One, because there were like 20,000 millionaires and billionaires that were made after World War One, and they said, "Ching, this is profitable. We need to make sure we stay in a wartime economy." That's how the Bushes got their initial fortune. So like, and it's been nothing but the Bushes, the Clappers. We've been lied to again and again and again and again and again.
Right.
And I think Bernie, as great as he's on domestic policy, he's under this illusion that that just because you're in power means that you want the best for the American people. It's like, since when? When since the people in power have wanted the best for their people?
Yeah, it's crazy. So that's one of Bernie's, drawbacks that you were talking about. Another thing that they talk about, Bernie's been one of the big champions of Medicare for all, and the sort of Republican rebuttal to that tends to be that, that's basically going to tax the people to death to be able to fund for Medicare for all and to be able to pay for free college for everyone. What do you say to that? Because one of the interesting things about the U.S., tends to be that the very stiff opposition to taxes. More so than other countries, I feel like. Even in India, there is opposition, but not as stiff as, in the US. Any talk about tax, and people get like offended when you talk about tax. Like, how dare you talk about raising taxes? So,
well, I think that you got to remember, we're taught from a very young age about like the American Revolution, right? It all sparked because of the Boston Tea Party. Why? Because of taxes on tea, and that's where it also, right? So like taxation without representation, which is ironically what we have right now, because we're not really being represented by the people in power. Like, so we are being taxed without representation. I have no idea where the hell my tax money goes. I am actually personally against income tax under a certain tax bracket, right? So I feel like if you make 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, even 100 to 150,000, I don't think you should be taxed at all. I think that once you get to the point of being a corporation, now your business is reliant on a person, the consumer, buying from you, right? So it becomes a symbiotic relationship, and therefore, because your business is reliant on the person buying from you, I believe that you should then be you should be responsible in some way for providing public goods to ensure that the consumer could continue to buy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, but the staunch opposition to taxes, it's kind of silly, especially when we're talking about Medicare for all, because as far as like the net gain in income, I think it's like 60 to 70% of the middle class and the upper middle class even would actually save money for Medicare for all. Because as our system is currently set up, you have the ACA and it's costing us more money. Like, we pay more in healthcare than any other country in the world, and all those countries have like universal healthcare, right? And they always say, well, it doesn't work because of the people. And it's like, that's a weird argument to make. There's more people, so it won't work. If there's more people, there's more dollars to spend, and you can divvy up the cost to more people. So why wouldn't it? There's more money to spend,
right,
not less. And then they all say, well, look at how high taxes in Sweden and Norway. And I'm like, yeah, so that's a straw man, because the reason that tax is so high, I think it's like 41%, for example, in Denmark, 40%. Does Denmark, can they grow their own sugarcane? Can they grow their own vegetables and fruits? Their taxes are that high because they're constantly paying on imports. That's what they're paying for. We don't have that issue. Our taxes are higher than they need to be already, and we could lower them to 3 to 4%. Like, realistically, we could lower them 3 or 4% for the middle class, and we would still be able to afford Medicare for all with the taxes we pay right now.
Right.
And like, if you go to the Sanders Institute, they do a very good job of explaining it. Their website does a very good job of explaining it. But basically, every objective think tank has said this would save your country. But it's not the thing is, it is the right thing to do. It is the fiscally responsible thing to do. It is the objectively right thing to do. However, private insurance industries pay politicians to make sure that you don't do the right thing.
Right.
Even if it is the smart thing to do.
Right.
Because then they're like, oh, well, you're going to kill an industry. Okay. I don't care. Like, I'm not even, not saying I don't care about people being able to feed their family, but do you think that, because people in healthcare, people are under the assumption that like you get free health insurance if you're in healthcare. No, that's not how it works. So even if you're in healthcare or working in the insurance industry, sure, they're like, well, shit, if I can have Medicare for all, maybe I can go back to school. I don't have to, there's a lot of benefits. Same thing with free college, taxing speculation on Wall Street. The reason that free college becomes more possible here than everywhere else under Bernie's plan is because we're the only one that has Wall Street.
Yeah.
It's like nobody finds any significance in that. Our GDP is high, so even though that we don't, and the people unfortunately don't really get benefit from it, the way the system is currently structured. But if you're going to require us to go to school to be able to get a job, a decent paying, just a decent job, then it should be treated as high school. Right. It should be free. Now, if you want to still make it competitive, that's a whole different discussion. But it should, and not to mention, these loans don't even go to college. Colleges are funded by their sports programs and by grants, which is why professors a lot of times let their TAs do most of the work, and the professors worry about doing scholarship, conducting research, so they can compete for grants against other schools. That's where the money comes from for school. So but taxing Wall Street speculation, all of a sudden, and it's funny because what would happen if that legislation passed, all of a sudden college prices would drop. Because now it's become more competitive. It isn't about, well, this is more affordable than this one. Harvard's more affordable than UNC, or UNC is more affordable to Harvard, or this. All of a sudden, you have to compete for the smartest kids.
True.
And you want, and I love what UNC has done. UNC actually has one of the largest endowments in the country, and what they do now, and we're top 5 in the. When I was there, we were number 1 in the country in public schools. It was always a competition between us and UCLA, and then Michigan was like a distant third. So but the difference between UCLA is the better they got more elitists. It got more expensive as well because of that. UNC did the opposite. It only costs $17,000 to $20,000 a year to go there, depending on if you stay on campus or not. And then they go out and they hunt for. They have proxies in poor communities all around North Carolina to find people who think they would have never had a chance to get into UNC from their freshman year and coach them, so that they can then go to UNC, because those are the diligent workers. Those are the people who otherwise would go to a community college instead, when it isn't even necessary because they have the intellect to go. Then they give them scholarships for it. So and they're and every other school in the country can do this. They're choosing not to. Yeah. Because there's no profit in it. Yeah. So if all of a sudden, if every public school is free, then this affects sports. All of a sudden, well, I don't need to play sports. I don't need to play sports to go to college. I can play sports because I love playing sports, and I can then go to whatever college I want to because public school is free. And now, if maybe I want to stay, because another school offered you a scholarship, because that was a very popular thing in North Carolina, because we're a huge basketball state, and we're a huge track state, and a huge soccer state. UNC's obviously always in the top for basketball. Same with Duke. UNC is the best soccer school in the country. Yeah, our track athletes, we had 2 track athletes. When I was in high school, 2 of our track athletes were on the Olympic team for track, the U.S. Olympic team, not the high school team. We have the Nike National. We have a bunch of Nike National winners. So these sports, but the parents a lot of the times come from backgrounds where they were forced into the military because they were poor. So they're looking for security to make sure that their kids have stability. And so they kind of force sports down their throat. But when you do that, right, you're sacrificing a huge part of life because you become desocialized. If you're a football player, unfortunately, the truth of the matter is football players they cannot converse with anybody outside of football players. And and they're few and far between they become analysts for the NFL. But because that's just kind of the culture, because all you're focused on is football, football, football. But now I still can focus on, I'm not that good at football. Maybe I don't have to focus on it because I'm not passionate about it. I love playing, but I'm not passionate about it. I can focus on my passion and not worry about football being the only way I can get to this elite school and be able to afford being there. Sure. So Bernie's domestic policies are so important. It's not just Bernie's, but Bernie's, Tulsi's, and a couple of Warrens, but I'm not really a fan of Warren.
What do you make of the argument? There's the argument there that I don't know if this is 100% true, but in a lot of states, apparently only a few insurance companies are allowed to operate. And because of, right?
I worked in health insurance. Idaho is one of them.
Yeah.
Utah, another
Right.
one, and it's extremely expensive to get insurance there
Right,
because of
and
it.
so that, because there's only a few companies that are allowed to operate, that's what keeps driving the premiums up. And there was actual free competition. That's another Republican argument, that if there was actual free competition, then healthcare would not be as expensive as it is right now. So that's what we should be ensuring first.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the Republicans make that argument. Guess the states that
Right.
have the
Right,
least
that's a
competition.
very good point. That's a very good point.
Florida's one of them. Idaho, like I said, Idaho, Utah. What's another one? Nevada is a kind of like blue or red, depending on what part. But Nevada's another one. There are a lot of states that are predominantly red, and the Republicans could increase competition. But then it's a combination of the Republicans don't really make it easier for the insurance companies that they claim to want to help. The state level Republicans. And so because of that, the insurance companies, because of the population size or in the concentration of population is only in a couple of places, they end up just like, you know what, fuck it, we're not gonna be here.
Yeah.
They leave. A lot, like Aetna has left a lot of states. They left New Jersey. They left Florida. I mean, it's crazy, and it's Trump's insurance plan has been horrific. It's been horrendous.
Yeah.
The only good thing about it is, like, the reason I would prefer it to Obamacare, and that's only because I don't have like a crazy pre-existing condition, is because, like, if I can't afford it, I won't be fined for not being able to afford it.
Yeah.
That's the only good thing about Trump's plan. And for the middle class or the upper middle class who are paying, I mean, they may make $80,000, but they're paying $20,000 a year for health insurance, which is, oh hell no, I just have to die. You're not taking, like, I value my health, but Lord baby Jesus, I would not be mentally stable if you taking $20,000 because I might get sick one day.
Yeah.
$20,000 a year, I might get sick, motherfucker. I'll just pay for it when I go. I will pay for it nah, you know what? I'm just gonna have to put that on the hospital bill. The hospital gonna have to cover that. Do you have health insurance, sir? Nope, but your ass still gonna see me today because I'm in this ER. Well, how you plan on paying for it when you leave? I don't know. Y'all let me know, and I'll let you know if that's cool, because I'm not paying for this. So y'all let me know what plan y'all come up with, and we can work on it together. Because I'm not paying $20,000 a year. Like, this is not an exaggeration. I know a man. I bullshit you not. Had a house, Colorado. He lived in Denver. I found I talked to him while I was in health insurance. He was making $170,000 a year. Beautiful house in Denver during the time of the marijuana boom. Because of healthcare, he had to quit his job, live in an RV instead. Because he was collecting retirement, so he lived off retirement and got a lesser paying job that didn't require him to buy the insurance from the company. And he was net making more money that way.
Wow.
Because he said he and his wife, because of their age and because of his income, a little bit had to do with her income as well, they were paying $11,000 a month for healthcare.
$11,000 a month.
Because it was about $7,000 for their premium, which was a kind of a Colorado thing, and because of their age, and because of the individual mandate that everybody has on themselves. There was only 2 of them. They had no kids, so like, oh, you can afford to pay more. Then on top of that, they did have to get medicine, so they were going to their doctor's appointments, but they had to pay off their deductibles first. They had to, one of them would go to the hospital. They would have to pay off the deductible before covering anything. And then it got to the point where their prescriptions had deductibles. So like, it became cheaper for them to live. Because when he sold his house, because you got to think, when they're talking about your health care, they average your income and all that good stuff. But then when you file taxes, your health care could raise.
That's insane, man.
Because they're going to calculate your total assets even if you don't have the liquid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, and it's so much more complicated. Just give everybody health care.
Yeah. It's
not a debate. How can I potentially be fulfilling my full potential as an American, as a citizen, as a utility for society to better this society if I'm constantly having to worry about my health care, not only my physical health, but my mental health as well? Because as your physical health deteriorates, your mental health does deteriorate and you become less useful. And so I just feel like it's not even a debate at this point. The fact that we're still having it shows just how influential money is on politics.
Yeah, it is. I think there's absolutely no doubt about that. Now, Tulsi Gabbard is someone that you've spoken in favor of before, and I think one of the primary reasons that we kind of talked about that I can glean from that is her stance on foreign policy, which was one of the first things that I heard about her when I first heard about her, and I couldn't agree more because I feel like that was probably the only person who came out and was in the running for any kind of office or was in any kind of political office that was openly saying that we need to pull away from these insane foreign intervention wars and regime change wars that are wasting trillions of dollars, which could be used to fix infrastructure, which could be used to provide healthcare. She said something like, if you take the money that we're spending in these pointless wars and bring it back into the country, we could probably fund healthcare with that.
We could, if we ended one of the wars, we could fund healthcare with all of them.
Right?
And it's crazy because people have this impression that Tulsi isn't good on domestic policy. And I have to quickly correct them because I'm like, oh, no, I don't think you get it. You're thinking of it. And it's propaganda, right? It's one of the, you can't really attack Tulsi on anything at this point. Everything has been a lie. Even the thing about Modi. Like, oh, she's good on foreign policy. What about her endorsement of Modi? Okay, show me where it's at. I always tell people, and I actually watched your video about that situation, and I learned a lot from it. And it sounds about right. It sounds literally almost identical to American politics.
Right.
It's like everybody is the bad guy. This side's the good guy. This side's the bad guy. The mainstream media is lying about everything, and because divisiveness and partisanship is profitable.
It's
and that's just
profitable.
the truth of the matter. That's what the truth of the matter. So they say that. So I tell people all the time. I say, I don't know Modi. I never met his family. I'm not friends with the man. I don't know him. So I'm not going to say whether or not he's a great or a bad guy, but he's in power. So
we can discuss that a little bit, and we'll definitely come to that. We can talk about that for a few minutes. But I wanted to kind of stick with the foreign intervention.
Oh, no. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay,
so what I'm saying is I don't know the man. Neither does Tulsi. So what I'm saying is, if I'm on the committee for foreign affairs, the committee for foreign affairs, the foreign affairs committee where I do foreign things that usually involve affairs, I'm probably going to have to meet with the leader of one of the most powerful countries in the world. I think that's what I should be doing. Because if there is a problem, say if there was a problem with Modi and his interactions with the religious minority there, wouldn't you want to, I don't know, talk the shit out? Maybe I don't know. Like it's same thing with Assad. If he was this crazy psychopathic ophthalmologist, eye doctor, that would be like something straight out of a damn Austin Powers movie, like the evil eye doctor. Yeah, okay, because everybody believes that. Like nobody else in the world believes. Right. This man has a high and tight fade. His wife is absolutely drop dead gorgeous. It is the sweetest thing ever. And he rides in the Honda Civic through his hood with the windows down. Okay, like this man is all right. I don't think he's a psych. Like I don't know what people think about him, but he's an ophthalmologist at the end of the day, and he was a medic when he was forced to join the military because his dad asked him to. He was a medic in the military for Syria. So like even if he was a psychotic man though. So what, we just gonna like not talk to him while he just chemically attacks people?
I mean, what's interesting is that people say, there's a lot of people from the left side of the spectrum that are attacking Tulsi for meeting Assad, and even on the right side of the spectrum, a lot of people are attacking Tulsi for meeting Assad. But then people are saying, well, shouldn't we at least try to talk to the leader of North Korea? Why are we just escalating things? Shouldn't we at least try to talk to him? Shouldn't we at least try to work something out?
They want us to go into World War III.
Yeah, like meeting and talking to North Korea is fine, but meeting and talking to Assad is not fine. I don't understand why.
Well, no, remember they attacked Trump for meeting with Kim
when he went and spoke to him.
Which was ironic because remember during the election, oh my God, he's going to start World War III. He's going to start with North Korea. And he's like, well, I'll try to talk to him and see what can happen. Oh, my God. He's talking to dictators now. And people don't get it. And I know the reason. So the reason I'm anybody who watches my show, the people who aren't woke, it's a little tough to digest because I'm a very realistic person. I'm a historian. I'm a political historian. And I know when signs are pointing to one thing, like I'm like ringing the alarm People are like, oh, you get emotional. You're way too passionate about this stuff. Well, yeah. I don't like people dying for no reason when it's something that's preventable. While you sit behind your computer on Super Chat on YouTube on your high horse, like, look at me, I'm supporting Elizabeth Warren. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if Palestinians die because I got 15 likes on my YouTube comment. Like, it doesn't. Like, so with World War One, people don't know how World War One started in America. We're lied to about it. I've been talking about this more recently on my channel so that people can understand just how important this issue is, like World War One specifically. Even for me, listen, when you realize you've been lied to by your American education system, which is not that good, by the way, a little bit better in Illinois, but not that good around the world, around the country, you get scared to look up certain things because you know the answer. And you don't want it because then you're going to have to go down the rabbit hole. Yeah. So World War II is a little bit more cut and dry. Like Pearl Harbor is the reason we joined in, blah, blah, blah. Cool. World War I is different, though. And in school here, we're taught that we entered World War that World War I started because of some random guy named Archduke Franz Ferdinand being assassinated. Now, you would probably think, well, maybe he's the heir to the German throne. No, he won't that. Maybe you think he's the heir to the, British throne, because that's who it's primarily. Nope, it wasn't that. Well, Russia? Nope, wasn't that. This man was some random archduke from Austria. Yeah. So hold up, and you raise your hand. Like maybe 2 kids in the classroom always raise their hand. I still remember it so vivid, because even when I was tutoring, you still see this. Huh? What did you? How? So right. Who was involved? They're like, well, it was Germany versus Britain. That's how it started. Then why did somebody named Archduke Franz Ferdinand from Austria set off an entire world war? That's just how it goes. That's the answer for the test, so you need to know it. So that's how it supposedly started, right? And then America joins in and sounding the alarm on Germany, and it was all a lie. It was because Rothschild, Cecil Rhodes, the guy who's named after the Rhodes Scholarship, is responsible for the South African apartheid and was responsible for the secret society that wasn't a secret. They actually announced it, and they were pretty braggadocious about it. Their whole agenda, their entire goal was to create an English-speaking dominated world. That's what they wanted. Germany was their biggest threat to that achievement. Yeah. They tested it in South Africa, which is why you have the Afrikaners who speak with British accents specifically, because that's exactly what Cecil Rhodes wanted. And so he said, shit, we can do this. So we didn't start setting things into motion, because at the same time this was happening, Germany was becoming the largest economic power in the world, and they were working side by side with Russia to do it. Right. J.P. Morgan linked up with Rothschild. They bankrolled Teddy Roosevelt in the Bull Moose Party here, which is something the Bull Moose Party is always celebrated here. Like, oh yeah, they were an insurgent party and blah, blah, blah. No, Teddy Roosevelt was a blithering, egotistical moron who thought he was entitled to the White House. And they took advantage of it to split the Republican vote, which at the time, was the quote unquote Democratic Party. Right. It just flipped. Yeah. So that's how Woodrow Wilson got elected. Woodrow Wilson was specifically elected because he was a bigger moron and more easily manipulated than Teddy Roosevelt was. So he lies about this boat called the Lusitania that was said to have had American citizens on it that were simply going on vacation. It was a lie. It was an American cargo ship full of weapons, but it was sank either way. And up into this build-up and this lead-up, we kept blaming Germany for everything, and then we said that Germany sank that boat, and all of a sudden the American public went from hell no, we're not getting involved in that war over there to now we can get involved in this war. Yep. Now what's scary about this is like Germany didn't do anything wrong the entire time, and we utterly obliterated them for doing nothing but making an honest living and growing their economy during the Industrial Revolution the same way that everyone else was doing. But they were just a little bit better at it at the time, at least in Europe. Not necessarily better than America, but in Europe, they were the best at it. And they were competition, so we lied. We destroyed their economy. We blamed them. Then we crippled their army. We crippled their economy after that. That's how Hitler rises to power, because he was able to focus in. Remember, like we said, tribalism.
And the whole thing about restoring German pride,
Exactly. And it was tribalism because it was easy for him to say, we're the Germans. We're the Germans. We don't like the Jewish people. Why was he able to do that? This is the part of the story that doesn't get told because it's kind of weird because that's not how human nature works. You don't just come up with something out of nowhere, right? It's like, oh, Jewish people are bad. Let's go to war. Like, that doesn't make any rational sense. Like, if you told me right now, I don't know, Indians are bad. Let's hate them. Okay, but how? Why?
Why? Yeah.
Like, cause man, they got all that money. Yeah, that's still not a good enough reason, bro.
Yeah.
Here's the part that doesn't get told because Rothschild loves keeping his name out of the history books. Rothschild was the name that was teaming up with J.P. Morgan to push World War I, and Germany and all of Europe knew it. Right. Especially because the Rothschild family had bankrolled every major war up until that point in Europe. And that's like common European history. They know that. But specifically, Lord Rothschild from Austria was the one who pushed that war that led to Germany's demise. So they were able to coalesce around the fact that he did it, quote unquote, because he's Jewish, and assume that every Jewish person, specifically every Ashkenazi Jewish person, was affiliated with Rothschild.
I see.
So now, because of Woodrow Wilson's ignorance and the lies that he perpetuated to help cripple Germany's economy and destroy their army and kill millions of people, not only in Germany but around the world, but specifically in Germany, the Holocaust happens.
Right. Well, I'm sure there's more layers to that, right? Because he was actually then Hitler was able to. He used the connection. He used the fact that Rothschild was Jewish, whereas what he should have viewed Rothschild as was just a greedy businessman who was just trying to ruin the competition. But he used that and said, well, he didn't do it because he's a greedy businessman. He did it because he's Jewish, and now let's...
But he can't do that. Why? Because you need the greedy businessman to make sure that you can rise to power.
Yeah, of course. So
like that's what do we see now in America? We see the Islamophobes on both sides of the party was Muslims. Muslim terrorists, the radical Muslims, Muslims. Every time we associate terrorism, unfortunately, like we're conditioned to think of Muslims. Every time we think about immigration, we're conditioned to believe they're Mexican. Anytime we think about welfare, we're conditioned to believe we're talking about black people. Because that's how conditioning works. Because if you point at the businessmen who you need, who have the money that you need to rise to power, then you will never get that money and you will never rise to power.
Right.
So like he's not going to demonize the businessman. He's going to he said at the time, the rich Jewish people were the minority. So it was easy to demonize.
Sure.
Especially when you had a name to attach to it, and that name is unfortunately left out of the history books.
Sure. And there's a history, Europe has a ugly history with anti-Semitism too. So to tap into that is easier than convince the people that, it's actually a big business interest. So to tap into that old history and then rally people up, I think that's much easier to do. And
unfortunately, the ties to anti-Semitism go back to the Rothschild family. And what they did was, just like in the States, the guilty party always plays the victim, right? So now people who have nothing to do with it are feeling the flames because of you taking advantage of their pain. The Rothschilds created Europe. Like the main street in Tel Aviv is called like Rothschild Road or something like that. Right. Rothschild Street. And it's like a whole story. Like you can Google it. It's like one of the first things that come up. You look up how the Rothschilds created Israel. They're proud of it. It's their fault that Israel was necessary to begin with, because they're the reason that the Holocaust happened. And it's so ironic that they managed to cause the Rothschild family never suffered. They profited from these wars, which is so sad, because for millions of lives being destroyed, they then convinced half the world, now we have to put a country here and destroy this group of people, the Palestinian people, to get what we want. And it was like, it's just so insane to me that they were like the ones making the argument, well, we have to have our own homeland now because we're being persecuted everywhere. And it's like, but you're the reason for it. You're literally, because the word anti-Semite. So the Rothschilds also, with the combination of American interests as well, created the idea of taking over the press to manufacture consent and push for propaganda. That was them. It was that little circle that they created. And that was one of the first, World War I was where they first tested that theory out. And to this day, we use the term anti-Semitism commonly to refer to being anti-Jewish, which is wrong. It is actually anti-Semites. So Semites from the Middle East, from Southeast Asia, and from West Africa. Those are all
like if you're saying anti-Semite, the Christianity and Islam are also technically Semitic religions. So you can say
anybody from the Abrahamic religions technically are they're Semites.
Semitic people, yeah.
And so because of that, so now you took a word that actually didn't really apply to Ashkenazi Jews. Right. It didn't. But now it almost exclusively benefits Ashkenazi Jews because the Sephardic Jews are treated shitty in Israel as well. There's a white supremacy problem there. All their leaders don't look like the Jewish people that people were familiar with back in the day. They don't look like Jesus. They look more like Trump, if you catch my. And the ones who are white, the quote unquote Sephardic Jews who are white, like Netanyahu, they take advantage of that because they're still white supremacists at the end of the day. But he's like, oh, I can't be racist. I'm a Sephardic Jew. Like, I'm not even joking. That's a thing. It's the same thing like in America. They mirror our politics and our strategies. And so that's why I get so upset when we're talking about foreign policy as if it doesn't affect our domestic policy, like it doesn't affect lives. When people say something about Tulsi, she's only good on foreign policy. Bro, you don't understand. There's nothing else if we don't get foreign policy right.
Right. No, I understand you there. The problem with this kind of foreign policy is that it's rarely ever, especially in the modern era, especially the things that they've been involved in the past 20 or 30 years, it's not well thought out. It's done with a particular goal in mind, and that goal is not necessarily solving the problem, but prolonging the problem as long as we can so that the money can be made off of it. And what it's doing is, certain companies and certain people are making a lot of money off of it, but you're essentially destroying entire countries. And if we just look at Afghanistan, for example, let's just take Afghanistan as an example. The United States went into Afghanistan in 2001 and this, we're going to get rid of the Taliban, we're going to go kill Osama bin Laden, and we're going to take revenge for the thousands of people that were killed in 9/11. Fair enough. But what happened there? They did not think this through. They said, all right, we're America. We're going to go in all guns blazing. We're going to kill a few thousand people, and the problem is going to go away. But that's not.
Oh no, we thought it through. That's exactly what we wanted to do. We went there. We established bases. We pointed guns at anybody who decided to try to stop us from establishing bases, and we're still there. And now we have a stronghold in the Middle East.
Away, if now Trump's talking about pulling troops out of Afghanistan, right? He's saying, I'm going to get everybody back home from Afghanistan. The day the American troops move away from Afghanistan is most likely going to go back to the way it was before the U.S. troops moved in. So what changed in those, 18, 19 years that the American troops were there? Nothing at all.
Just a population reduction.
Yeah. Literally just that, like nothing changed.
And the funny part is, it's not funny, it's more so ironic. So, I have a friend named Nahid, and she's going to be talking about her story on my show. She's from Afghanistan. As a small spoiler, she was there during the Taliban situation. And she, more than anybody, knows, it's crazy. They say they're coming to destroy the Taliban, and they put the Taliban there. Right. They train the Taliban. The Taliban uses our weapons. Right. Just like ISIS. ISIS uses our weapons. Al-Qaeda uses our weapons. Yeah. And it's and what happens eventually, interestingly enough. So the Taliban is actually unique because we don't really have any proof of us fighting like the Taliban, right? We say that they're the enemy, that's why we're there, but it's kind of like ISIS in Syria. Hold on. At first, it was a Syrian civil war, and then all of a sudden, once again, just as convenient, ISIS shows up. It's like ISIS was like, how do y'all always manage to be at the right place at the wrong time? It's same thing with Hezbollah, right? So whenever we were trying to establish or manufacture consent for Venezuela, they really went off the deep end. John Bolton looked at us dead in our faces. Like I said, for some reason they think we're morons. They really do, and they said, we have to go into Venezuela now. We believe that Hezbollah is working with Russia to overthrow Venezuela. And, bro, I was like, you did not. So basically, you just use as many buzzwords as you can and hope that we would fall.
It's like that. I don't know if you've ever seen that Family Guy clip where, like, I think there's an episode where Lois Griffin is running for election, like a local mayor election, and she goes onto the podium and she's, running against Mayor West, and so she says something very sensible and nobody pays attention, and then Brian goes and says to her, just talk about 9/11. So they ask her about like her policies, and Lois says 9/11, and the audience goes crazy. Sharing. And I feel like that's kind of what they're doing, when they talk about, why should we be going into Iraq? What does Iraq have to do with 9/11, or what does Iraq have to do with American casualties? It was Saudis, I think 17 out of the 19 people that bombed the Twin Towers were Saudis.
Yeah, they're in Saudi Arabia is like in a federal lawsuit right now in the 11th Circuit Federal Court.
Right.
Not even joking. Like, because of 9/11.
And
I'm not in Florida.
Is our best friend.
Yeah, I know. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna see if I can find it. But yeah, Saudi Arabia, and it's so crazy to me. Like I said, because we were itching to go in Afghanistan. We gave the president unlimited power to be in Afghanistan. And then whenever I kind of got older and started doing my research, I started, hold up, Osama was, and I found that out when I worked in an intelligence brigade. So I was in 525 Battlefield Surveillance Brigade before it was 525 Intelligence Brigade, but then we added a cavalry squadron to us, right. And so we became a combat arms unit. And they were like, so we had to do a briefing before we deploy. So you all know about Osama, right? We already covered this. We trained Osama, the CIA trained him, and a lot of the leaders of Al Qaeda before they went rogue and da-da-da. And they said that shit so casually. I was like, hold the fuck up, what did you just say? And they were like, yeah. He was one of the Saudi Arabian royal family, so we were really close to him. Whoa. Okay, now I need you to read back. Go all the way back to the beginning. Why are we going to Afghanistan then? Well, because he might be there. Okay, and so that sounds okay. So maybe he might possibly be there. Why are we blowing everything up? I need an answer for that then.
Right.
Well, because people were defending him. Everybody's defending him. Every tribe, even the ones that are rivaling against each other, are defending him. Are you sure about this?
Yeah.
Well, that's what our intel tells us. The same intel that told you there were weapons of mass destruction. I'm gonna need y'all to be a little bit more. You have practice a little bit more scrutiny with this damn intel y'all keep getting that keeps costing people thousands of lives, right? So.
The other interesting thing about that as well, is that they decided to go into Afghanistan. All right, you went into Afghanistan. After a couple of years in Afghanistan, you probably realized that most of the trouble is not coming from Afghanistan. Yeah, Taliban was bad. You got rid of Taliban, or at least pushed them back and installed a slightly different government. I get it. But after that point, you should have realized that, okay, majority of these problems or majority of these large figures, they're actually not in Afghanistan. Where are they hiding? They're all hiding in Pakistan. They're all hiding in Pakistan, and they're getting support from the Pakistani army. The Haqqani network that is killing American soldiers. Where are they? Osama bin Laden, where was he found? All of these big terrorists, where are they all living? Pakistan, which until recently, I know Trump's recently cut off funding, but until recently, very close ally of the United States.
Yeah, and I think that to be honest with you, so, Pakistan's kind of always been like that little brother or that friend or the acquaintance that wants to be like cool, like be part of cool kids. Yeah. That just kind of always do what we tell them to do. Yeah. And like we put all these different, like if you go to the Department of Defense's website, we put all these countries, terrorist, watch lists. They have terrorists there. And it's like, of course, Iran, the countries you would think, Iran, Syria, Afghanistan. Basically, that's not a terrorist watch list. That's where we're going next. That's what that. Pakistan never made the list.
Nope.
And I'm like, hold on. If you go to Wikipedia, I'm dead ass. If you go to Wikipedia, they talk about the fact that Pakistan has always harbored terrorists.
Yep.
We know this for a fact. And even Trump announced at one point saying, we can't believe that Pakistan is still harboring terrorists. And we're like, hold on. I go back to the Department of Defense's website. Y'all don't got them up there.
Yeah.
You're like, hold up. Why? You're saying it, but I'm not. But then, so that's when you start seeing the truth. Like, the more you start researching this stuff, when somebody makes a claim like that basically sounds like they're trying to send us into war, do some research about it. Yeah. Like they say Iran's, a theocratic dictatorship and da-da-da-da. I'm like, hold on. Didn't they just hold elections? And I didn't see not one complaint. I mean, people mad when they side don't win, but I didn't see not one complaint from people dying or being executed or having their head cut off or being ran by one fucking family for 2 generations like Saudi Arabia. But we got to go overthrow them because you don't like the outcome of their democratic process. They have a more democratic process than we do.
Yeah, and I feel like at the end of the day, the bigger problem is that Saudi offers more money. If Iran offered more money, they'd probably throw Saudi Arabia.
It was installed by Great Britain. Right. And all America's done lately is continue Great Britain's politics and further their interests. We've done it for the last 70 or 80 years. So this is an article from USA Today so it says families of 9/11 victims suing Saudi Arabia for role in attacks. Yep. This is from March 20th, 2017. The lawsuit was filed Monday in federal court on behalf of the families of 850 people who died and another 1,500 who were injured on September 11, 2001, the terrorist attacks in the United States. It holds the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia responsible for helping some of the attackers. The suit filed in federal court in the Southern District of New York in Manhattan is being handled by Krendler in New York City, and an aviation law firm that has been working with the families for 16 years. And that's just one of the laws. Basically, there are multiple lawsuits across the board. And one of the lawsuits, if I'm not mistaken, actually included the Mossad.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So which is, for those of you who don't know, the CIA's it's Israel's version of the CIA. And it's and if you want to convince me that the Mossad isn't any worse than the CIA, I'm pretty sure that they're responsible for just as much, if not more, of the problems in the Middle East. That attack in India, when they were Pakistan did it. Huh? Do you understand? That's kind of weird, right? Because it's weird when you just say a country's name.
You talk about the 26/11 attacks?
The recent ones?
Oh, the recent ones in Pulwama? In Kashmir?
Yeah, in Kashmir, exactly. So they were Pakistan did it. Huh? What do you mean Pakistan did it?
Right.
I need a more specific, how did it happen? How did you find out Pakistan did it? Did they say, Viva Pakistan before they did it? You killed them, so
Well, the guy that actually did the attack made a video before he did the attack, and he belonged to the terrorist group that is run by Masood Azhar. Masood Azhar is another terrorist that is getting shelter in Pakistan, and his group has claimed the attack as well, and they've been responsible for multiple attacks in India.
So that I believe, right. And I 100% believe it. But it was basically these terrorist organizations, we know most of the time, we said, hey, go to Pakistan, bro. We need you to go to Pakistan because that's the only place that's going to harbor you and get away with it. You go to India or excuse me, you go to Iran or Syria, we really going to have to go after you. But if you go to Pakistan, but when we call on our favor, you need to honor it. So remember in the beginning of 2017 or 2018, Trump randomly tweeted out, Pakistan has betrayed our trust, we're going to have to do something about this. And it was so random. Yeah. It was the most
There was an interview, remember? There was an interview where he said that country hasn't done a damn thing for us. And then they made him kind of track back a little bit.
Exactly. And then about 6 or 7 months later, they said we really need to consider putting Pakistan on the terrorist watch list. I'm terrorists? Why now? Because they've been harboring terrorists. We've been known this. Yeah. And then you start once again connecting the dots. Oh shit, they might have started to say, you know what they probably did? To be honest with you, their leadership probably yo, maybe we shouldn't have terrorists in this country because they're not keeping up with their end of the bargain. Yeah. So when they say that, which is usually what happens, right? We don't want terrorists. Well, now you're going on the terrorist watch list. Congratulations. Same thing with Syria. We don't want to harbor your terrorists. We don't want to give you let you have. Okay, cool. You're now on the terrorist watch list too. Chad, Chad and Africa got put on the Muslim ban list. I don't know if you knew.
Yeah.
Shit, it was the same day. It wasn't really random, but it was the same day that we put Venezuela on the terrorist watch list or the Muslim ban list. Because they got off the
Venezuela was on a Muslim ban list?
Yeah.
That's what happened. Muslims in Venezuela?
Yeah, that's what happened. A lot of Muslims in Venezuela apparently.
What?
But there's a lot of oil there too. That's the real problem. And they left the petrodollar. And that's what happened. So when we were in charge of Chad, we had a dictator that we installed in Chad because that was the one that was sending all the terrorists and the rebels into Libya to constantly cause turmoil there that gave us the reason to be there to overthrow Gaddafi. We obviously Chad rebelled against that guy, and the U.S. hung him out to dry. And now the leader of Chad, who is also the current chair of the African Union, he's elected chair of the African Union, is from Gaddafi's school of revolutionaries, interestingly enough. Germany loves him. A lot of Europe loves him because he's actually representative of African interests. So we then put Chad on the Muslim ban list. After they excommunicated all the terrorists,
right,
installed a democratically elected leader, we were like, okay, yeah, that's what happens.
One of my big problems, that's something that Tulsi Gabbard was on the Joe Rogan show recently, and she was saying the same thing, which I completely agreed with, was she was talking about how the big problem with the U.S. foreign policy has been following through on their promises. So they went and said, okay, Gaddafi's not a nice guy and he's trying to, develop nuclear weapons. We're going to go tell him that, hey, Gaddafi, if you try to develop nuclear weapons, we'll come after you. But if you don't develop nuclear weapons, if you get rid of your nuclear program, we'll leave you alone. And so what does Gaddafi do? Gaddafi says, all right, I'll get rid of my nuclear program. And soon after he was dead, they went and got him. And so when you're
saying, which is crazy.
When you're saying, why isn't North Korea getting rid of its nuclear program? Well, why do you think? Because he literally said,
he cited that. He cited that. He said, why would we?
Because he's seen what happens.
Why do you think Iran won't get rid of their nuclear program? I mean, because they say they have. I don't know if they have or haven't. They haven't violated anything really. But if I was them, I was like, shit, I wouldn't even enter the deal.
Right.
For what? Because the only reason they did it is to create something on paper to say you violated. So they have an official narrative to go in and say that, well, you didn't do it. So now we can implement sanctions and it looks like we're doing the right thing. But we all know who sanctions attack. Sanctions attacks the people. It never attacks the government. The governments and the elites are going to have money regardless.
Yeah.
But it's made to stoke anger and discontent with the government and then hopefully rebel. Oftentimes that doesn't actually work though.
Right.
Because the people know they're not stupid. They're like, why would our government wouldn't starve us? That doesn't really work out in their best interest. Because then we would blame them. Why would you know what I'm saying? So, but that playbook has been used so many times. It's old and it's tired and they're lazy. That's one thing I learned from my friend. Her father was too high. I can't even say really how high he was as far as the CIA is concerned. Right. Let's just say he's toppled a couple of governments in his day. Wow. And he was in charge of the mission. And he said that the U.S. foreign policy and our intelligence agencies are not as bright as you think they are. They came up with one playbook that worked in a vacuum because they were in control of information 100%, and there was almost no questioning them. And even then, he said they didn't have as much control as they would like, or a lot of things would have turned out differently. Like even North Korea and Korea would have turned out differently. Vietnam would have turned out differently. The anti-war movement wouldn't have grown so much. So even then, when they had control over all the information, they still didn't get everything they wanted.
Right.
It's different now. They have control to a degree. They have control of Facebook because the CIA's venture capitalist firm, In-Q-Tel, invested most of the money into Facebook, which is why Mark Zuckerberg became the super billionaire, although other social media moguls never hit that type of mark. But they don't control necessarily how people communicate, even though they can try to manipulate algorithms. At the end of the day, if I'm woke already, I'm woke already. You can't fix that. And I'm going to figure out a way to communicate with the people regardless. Same thing with Twitter. They do foment a little bit of hatred and things like that. But when you have popular personalities who just one day say, you know what, I'm fucking tired of this. They completely break away from the norms and the narratives, which we've seen. Jimmy Dore is a great example of that. Jimmy Dore attracts a lot of people from both the left and the right. Yeah. And it's for no reason other than him being genuine in his discourse and genuine in his analysis of the issues. I'm the same way. I refuse to. I'm never going to vote for somebody because they're Republican. And I don't, whenever people say, well, who are you going to vote for? Right? That's what always comes down when so I don't know if you're familiar with the major election that happened here in Florida between Ron DeSantis and Andrew Gillum.
Yes.
It's a big thing, right? Well, Bernie endorsed him. Okay, but DeSantis is racist maybe. I mean, I ain't gonna lie to you, dog. Whenever I hear that excuse, I'm like, bro, you know I'm black. So you telling me I should sacrifice my morals because an old white man might achieve power?
Right.
Oh, wow. What will black people ever do when an old white man get into power?
Right.
The same thing we did yesterday. But I refused. And they were like, well, who are you going to vote for? I said, that's the problem. You didn't start paying attention to this election or to this situation until it was time to vote.
Yeah.
I did my research, said, okay, well, I can't vote for Gillum. Let me see who's running for county commissioner. Let me see who's running for council. Let me organize for this issue. Let me organize for this issue. Let me draw awareness to this issue so that Andrew Gillum or DeSantis, whoever may be bad or worse or good or bad, it doesn't matter because I'm organizing at the local levels. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
or I have a grander scheme. So if you're organizing for policies, if you're in the trenches with people, then you're not as worried about who just to sit in an office, because at the end of the day, if they're taking corporate money, which Andrew Gillum was, he was rubbing shoulders with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who cheated Bernie. Like he had Hillary Clinton come do a private fundraiser for him. So why would I think that he's going to be any better than DeSantis?
Right. Yeah.
And it turned out that DeSantis actually might be the best damn governor that Florida has had in 2 decades. It's actually scary. Yeah. He cleaned up the red tide. He cleaned up all the red algae. He got rid of Common Core. Debbie Wasserman Schultz district, where they were funneling school money into the politicians' pockets, he actually has a grand jury to bring the district under Florida's control until they get back on track and to audit them regularly. And this guy actually is anti-establishment. So like he was fighting against the Republican Party a lot in DC, which is why he decided to come back to Florida.
Interesting.
So like, it's kind of more like a Ron Paul or Rand Paul than anything. But he's been good. He's a Republican. So if I would have just voted because another Democrat told me, and if I voted because of my Democratic, or I'm not a Democrat, but if I voted because of the Democrat identity, I'd have been screwed. If I would have voted just because Andrew Gillum's black and I'm black, I would have been screwed. But because I allowed I educated myself on what was happening, I allowed the democratic process to take its course, and I did my due diligence to educate others on the facts of the situation. I said, yo, he's not Bernie Sanders. And no matter how much you want to be that, he's not that.
Yeah.
Like, it turned out, things just work out sometimes.
Right.
It's inexplicable. But when you allow the democratic process to take its course, things work out the way they're supposed to. When you don't, you end up with Trump. When you don't, you end up with Truman.
Right.
When you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a long list of examples of what happened.
Yeah. Did you ever get the chance to see that? And this is kind of what I was talking about, mainstream media. I wanted to talk to you about how, the mainstream media representation of certain candidates like Tulsi. And so there was a few examples. There was one example where there was a journalist called Barry Weiss who writes for the New York Times.
Yeah.
And she was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and as soon as he talked to her about Tulsi, she said, "Oh, that's an Assad toady. She's a horrible person. She's like the worst person in America."
She's like the worst.
Yeah, she's like the worst. And then when they asked her why, she's like, "I don't know, but I'm pretty sure."
But I'm pretty sure my friends at New York Times told me. So
yeah, I know. She's like, "I don't know, but I'm pretty sure," which was like the most interesting answer I've ever heard.
Yo, Joe's face during that interview was hilarious. It's the same face he makes while he was like interviewing Candace Owens. He's just like,
yes.
Are you sure about that? I'm gonna have to. Do you even know what toady means?
Yeah.
Well, I
She's
think
like,
it means.
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Do I know what that means? Am I saying? Am I using the right word? So you don't even know if you're using the right word, but you're trying to allege that this person's the worst person ever. Like.
Yeah. And so I just find that that's very emblematic of what the media coverage of her has been, just because like people don't really look at what her foreign policy stance is, which we've talked about a little bit. People don't look at what even her domestic policy stance is. If you ask a layman what Tulsi Gabbard's domestic policy stance is, they'll have trouble because they haven't read anything about it in the media at all, because the media doesn't really want to talk about it. It kind of wants to attack her, which I find really weird. All right, even if you don't like her, at least represent her issues honestly and then go after her,
Yeah, I don't. It's like with Elizabeth Warren, right? As a counterexample, because obviously with Tulsi, it's the same thing. I like Tulsi. I didn't find out she was a dope person until I met her in person. But my advocacy for her policies came from, well, shit. She's asking to have election integrity, paper ballots, voter verified paper ballots. The most aggressive climate change.
The criminal reform is another big one, which I find, because one of the things that I found when I moved to the U.S. was that people can get, life sentences for having a certain amount of pot on them, which I found absolutely insane. Like, you're ruining people's lives for for something that like
A
somebody
plan.
in a certain economic or racial area would get away with just like a, hey, don't do that again. They would get away with it, but some people are getting life, and that's insane.
Yeah. People in the 90s have, if you had coke on you, you were getting, if you even got sentenced at all, you were getting like demonstrably disproportionate sentences to if a black person had weed
Yeah,
on them.
that's insane.
Yeah,
That's
it's
absolutely insane.
even though coke has ruined way more lives than weed has ever
Yeah.
ruined. So, but so with Elizabeth Warren, when people, I don't really, she's weird to me. She's looked legitimately a weird person. But I don't really care about that. Like, but when people were
I
like,
did enjoy
"Why
the
are you?"
whole Native American saga. That was
Oh
funny.
my God, yo, and it's crazy because as like, so my family, I'm Blackfoot Native American, and but I'm not as into it in my culture as some of my other family members
Sure.
are. Like my god sister is from the Sioux tribe. She's Lakota,
Oh wow.
and like when we found out like she was basically using her Native American heritage to get boosts in life. When like, girl, you lily white. Like you are lily white.
Dude, that's what
You
he said. If you, I don't know if you watched that episode of Joe Rogan when he was talking
nah.
about like Elizabeth Warren's ancestry, and he was like, "Dude, I got my ancestry test done, and apparently, so Joe Rogan was saying, I got my ancestry test done, and apparently, I am more African than Elizabeth. I'm like 1,000 times more African than Elizabeth Warren is Native American,
Oh my God, that's
which
hilarious.
is insane if you
I
think
mean, I
about it.
wouldn't be surprised if Joe Rogan was West African. He looks like he could be like Syrian or something like,
Right,
or Lebanese even.
right, right.
So I wouldn't be surprised by that. But like, I know there are people. There are just certain. So Native Americans and like Africans and just and Native, not even just Native Americans in America, but natives in general. They just have very, very dominant features, which is
Yeah.
why they're called dominant genes. And Elizabeth Warren has zero of them. Not even a one. Her hair, her eyes, like she doesn't
Like
look like she's
nothing.
ever had any Native American in her whatsoever. I like looked up her parents, same thing. I'm like, where is she getting this? Like, oh, my grandma told me. I don't even know if those stories are true.
Yeah.
It's her friend's grandmother said, like, told her these stories, and like she just has always used them to get ahead. Because would it be that out of like would it be that out of character for her to do that? Isn't that what she's literally done for her whole career, is position herself for the next stage of her career? She endorsed Hillary. She wasn't for Medicare for all. Then she kind of was.
Yeah.
Then she announced. Then she wasn't again. And now all of a sudden she's for reparations, but then she never said she was for reparations ever again. And like, that's what she has always done. So why wouldn't she make up a lie about who she was?
Yeah.
We don't even know who she is. She was a Republican. Then the Democratic Party went through that shift where they actually became the Republicans, and she said, "Oh, well, I guess I can be a Democrat now too." And like when the Koch brothers took over the party in the 90s, like that's what she's done. But like you can look at the money she's taken, you can look at her crazy pro-Zionist positions. Like she's voted for every major war. She's voted for every major military budget. She pushed for war in Venezuela, for regime change in Venezuela. She's demonized Assad, even though we're finding out a little even more so now that the chemical weapons attacks were fake, the recent ones. There's like a official report just came out. So like, and people still want to call her progressive and even use her name in the same sentence. Well, she's not as good as Bernie or Tulsi, but she's still a progressive. Why? And it's because, well, she's a nice person, but
I feel like she's from the same school or the same batch as like somebody like Hillary Clinton. I mean,
yes,
Hillary Clinton. If you look at her campaign and how she ran it, she almost kind of became a progressive in 2016, 2015, 2016. It's like suddenly, oh, Hillary Clinton's, she's woke and she's a progressive now, which
convenient.
she really wasn't. Yeah, she really wasn't. And I feel like that's what a lot of these people are doing. Suddenly they're like, all right, so I guess this is what's cool now, or this is what we need to do now. And that's what they're turning towards. And I don't know if the media is doing the best job of maybe asking them those questions that why the sudden flip? Why wasn't this like if you did change your opinion, why was it so sudden? Because a lot of people have that gradual change, but they almost flip like right in time for election season.
Yeah, 100% agree. And with Warren, with Hillary, and this is messed up, but I mean it's not messed up, but it's a fact, and it's an uncomfortable fact. In the States, man, white women are like a protected class. they're given a certain amount of leeway and trust out the gate because that's how we're conditioned. I dare you, one day, right, when you're in an elevator, if you have a black guy and a white woman in that elevator, I guarantee they will be nowhere near each other because that is how black men are taught to be. Because of, like, so that was like an elevator incident is what sparked off the riots in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which led to the destruction of Black Wall Street. Like, and so, but it's because they're like the fine china of the patriarchy, and everybody's supposed to stay away from them except for white men. They can do what the hell they want to them. So with that comes certain privileges. When you criticize Hillary Clinton, it couldn't be because she's just a horrible damn person or a Republican, like, because she really was a Republican. It's because she's a woman. Yeah. Like, there are people who give Warren the benefit of the doubt in every conversation and will say Tulsi is bad and then put Bernie and Warren's name in the same conversation. And I'm like, huh? There's no way if you did your research about all three, like your research, not just read a couple of articles from the Daily Beast, but if you did your research on all three, there's no way that you come to the conclusion Warren's in the same sentence as Bernie. But what happens is, well, if they're saying it about, if they're saying this white savior of a woman is the answer, then she must be, because white women are never wrong. They're never evil, conniving. But if you're saying this about this Polynesian woman, look at her in that darker skin, I don't know if I can trust her. And just the fact that she is a woman on top of that, women do have to deal with sexism, and they do have to work twice as hard to prove that they are just as capable of their male counterparts. Yeah. But the thing is, it's one thing if you're Warren, right? Warren is different in this sense because she has absolutely no chance whatsoever to usurp Bernie, who is, to a lot of white people, unfortunately, the white knight. That's just how they see him. And it's because it's a very rare thing in America for us to see a white guy who actually does care about men, because he does, like, and is very passionate about it. That's very rare. Yeah. So like, America already has been conditioned to believe in the white savior. I don't know if you've ever seen those pictures with the white people holding the African babies, like, it's like that, but in politics, right? So, and that's kind of the sentiment about Bernie that a lot of people have, that he's great because he loves to see black people be better, and that's not a bad thing. However, there's a problem with that, because it's all good that Elizabeth Warren is being propped up because she's not a challenge to Bernie, not even close. However, Tulsi is a challenge. Yeah, Tulsi's a problem. And in Bernie's campaign, now they don't think of her as a problem, but they know she is competition. They're under no disillusions because they knew exactly where their campaign was around this same time during the last election. And Tulsi has more traction at this time than Bernie did during the last election.
Do you feel like she does? Because I feel like she doesn't get discussed that much in like the public sphere. She has a very strong, like, sort of focused following. But in the mainstream conversation, do you feel like she gets talked about enough?
Oh, no, but that's not going to determine the outcome of the election. And here's why. So I was part of Bernie's campaign during its inception, right? Literally beginning of May 2015 is whenever when people, my mom was like, well, what is this new club you're part of? Or you're in charge? I'm like, I'm Carolina Swift Bernie Sanders. I'm like, who the hell is Bernie Sanders? Well, like, seriously, my grandma, who the hell is Bernie Sanders? Everybody I knew is who the hell is Bernie Sanders? Because unless you were
that's true. You're right. He kind of just caught on fire a little bit.
I looked at a poll in May of 2015. 2% was his chance. Wow. 2%. And he hadn't reached the fundraising goal, but at that point, there was no talk of the fundraising goal. So nobody had even questioned it. And he ended up getting like 4 or 5% in the poll by the time the first debates came. And even in the first debates, he was, after that first debate, the most Googled topic on, like, in the trends. Like, he was number one, wasn't even close. And so for people to think that argument, well, she's not really getting that much traction. Why are we focused on her? She has no chance of winning. Blah, 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 blah. Because they can't, what are you going to argue against? You're going to argue against election integrity? You're going to argue against anti-regime change? You're going to argue against not wanting to fund terrorists? Like, I don't even understand why that's a debate. Like, why did that not pass unanimously? Exactly. Because you can't argue against anything. You can't argue against any of her policies. You can't. You would lose, and you would be exposed. So your intentions get exposed with the arguments you make against her. Because instead of uplifting Bernie past her, you say, well, Bernie's our only chance. Okay, well, why?
Yeah, that's a good
Why?
point. Why?
Oh, well, he has name recognition. I heard that argument somewhere before. Oh yeah, I heard about Hillary in 2016. Not saying that Bernie is Hillary, but there is, like, if we're talking about who's the best option, right? Not because I don't want to say, because before Hillary got just dragged through the dirt, it was a matter of Bernie being the best option, not Hillary is an evil human being. We didn't find that out until like mid 2016. So it was just Bernie's a better option. Hillary's okay, but Bernie's a better option. Bernie is better than okay. He's really, really good. But there are two parts to being the president of the United States of America. That's being the presiding officer, domestic policy, then being the commander in chief, which is the most important part. Because you don't have as much control over the domestic policy as you would like as a president. That's because that's how our checks and balances are set up. But you do have almost, at this point, unlimited control, except for the unilateral power to go to war over foreign policy. So, like, that's the one aspect that the president has, like, an immense amount of power. And if you don't understand it, the people who don't have the power but do have the power to manipulate will indeed manipulate you. So if you can't make the argument he's better on foreign policy, because there's nothing to prove that. Tulsi wants Medicare for all too, except for she wants to make sure the elections are secure so we can get progressives in power to make sure that Medicare for all gets passed.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So she wants all those things, except for she wants to take further steps. She doesn't want to take over the Democratic Party. She wants to burn that bitch to the ground. Which most of the country agrees with. Like, she doesn't want to go to war man, when she was on Joe Rogan's podcast and she said, I joined the military based on a lie. Do you know how that takes a lot of balls for a presidential candidate to say? Because the veterans actually get this. Like, we understand. A lot of us feel like that. I say it, but I'm on YouTube. I get paid to be controversial. It is what it is. But for a presidential candidate who loves being in the service, like, she loves her job. She's a medic. But for her to say, I joined based on a lie, that should tell you everything you need to know about her.
Right.
I mean, she's going to tell you the truth, at least her truth, even if it doesn't necessarily have a predictable net benefit for her. Yeah. So it's who is the best option. Go down policy point by policy point by policy point by policy point, and you're like, shit. Well, he's the best. Well, he has name recognition. Oh, he has the name recognition right now.
Yeah.
Have we had one debate? There's so there's a main difference between last elections and this election. It's the amount of debates. Yeah. The first last time didn't start until September. This first debate is June 20th. Yeah. Yeah. Don't you think that's a little bit more time?
It is. It definitely is. I think that
people stay on the truth is going to probably garner a lot of attention.
And it will probably get a lot of attention. It'll probably get a little bit of traction. And the point that you're making about what are you going to attack her with? What are you going to come after her with? And you're right about a lot of the policies that she's talking about are pretty sound policies. So people can't bring themselves to be like, oh, what about this? Let's go after her with this stuff. So they pick something that A, they don't know a lot about. B, the American people don't know a lot about, and very, very few people, if at all, know a whole lot about this whole thing. So they're like, well, what about your association with so and so and so in India? And what's interesting is, so I remember there was this interview that Tulsi Gabbard did recently with Glenn Greenwald for The Intercept. I don't know if you watched it, but
I watched some of it. It's hard keeping up with all of them. Good God.
Yeah. He asked her this question, right? What about your association with repressive leaders like Narendra Modi? So he's already setting the stage. When you ask a loaded question like that, when you say repressive, not even what do you think about a leader like Narendra Modi? When you use
I don't think that's fair to qualify statements like that.
You're already asking a loaded question. You're already qualifying the question. So he asked the question, and then he quoted two articles. He said that, well, this article says that this is what he has been doing, and this other article in New York Times says that this is what he has been doing. And he asked Tulsi the question. And both of those articles, what's interesting is that both of those articles say that, well, Modi's ordering or under his direction or under his approval, these Hindu mobs are walking around killing minorities in India. And what's interesting is that both of these articles use two sources to make that claim. Those two sources are called India Spent and factchecker.in, which are both India-based websites. Both of these, if you actually go to these sources, go to these organizations, and okay, let's see what is the methodology on which they're making these claims, right? So if you go to India Spend's website and if you go to they have this Our Methodology page. If you go to their Our Methodology page, their methodology literally says that we compile this data based on Google searches of English language websites. Is that how an organization does research?
Sound like Snopes in America.
You're compiling your data not by on-ground reporting, not by local language reporting, because look, India has like hundreds of different languages and India publishes news in hundreds of different languages. So it's usually the regional language media that gets the accurate news on the ground, and the English language media mostly gets urban news, right? Yeah. So you're not even looking at regional language media. You're just looking at a few English language media on Google. And you're compiling your data and you're saying, well, this is what's happening. So my problem with narratives like that and my problem with research like that is that you have American journalists, well-known American journalists like Glenn Greenwald. And
well-respected too at that. Well-respected,
exactly. Well-respected American journalists like Glenn Greenwald. Well-respected, American publications like the New York Times. And they're quoting these highly dubious sources to make some very, very serious claims against a democratically elected leader of a democratic country. And so that's a big problem. My only criticism of Tulsi in this regard would be that come the debates, because if she does get that traction, if she does get that popularity, then they're going to double down on this stuff. Then they're going to come at her hard. So what she'll need to do is she'll need to prepare for that eventuality. She'll need to prepare.
She is.
Right. I hope she is.
I told her
in the Greenwald interview, she was just a little bit like, oh, well, I agree with you. But I feel like she needs to kind of prepare and push back on it because people are going to go
so can I speak? So can I speak? Because so that's what you said is true because I told her. Because I understood. So I don't know if you saw that video that went viral of the guy in LA, like, what about all your ties to the BJP and the RSS and da da da. Yeah, I asked that guy after. So did my pasta from our network. I said, oh, so can I see those? Can I see those numbers? Because you said hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I just got done talking to her our finance guy. They did not have hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I was like, can I see those numbers? Oh, I don't have them on me. Oh, interesting.
Wow.
And I know why it's frustrating, and I because I was not familiar with how bad Hinduphobia was around the world. Did not know. But it's a thing. Like a lot of Christians do suffer outside of the United States, and people don't know because in the States Christianity is dominant. So what happened was I asked her sister, Vrindavan. Am I pronouncing her name right? Well, I call her V, but is it Vrindavan or Vrindavan?
I think it's Vrindavan, yeah.
Okay, so I was correct. So I asked her, I said, hey, I already know everything that's being said is bullshit. I understand that. But I need to know why is it that y'all are hesitant to deal with it? I don't believe any of it. That's not, I just need to know what it is. Cause I know it's an emotional thing. Cause they're very logical people. But the thing is, no one else is asked to defend even being seen in a picture with somebody because they have the same religion. That would be like, could you imagine the American media calling up Ilhan Omar, sitting down with Ilhan Omar in an interview and saying, so some people with Muslim last names donated to you.
Right. Right.
Are you part of the Muslim Brotherhood?
Right.
What? Are you kidding me? That would never happen. That would be like me being in a picture with Farrakhan, who just asked for a picture because I was like at a big event where a bunch of leaders were at, and then he says something stupid later, and they're like, "Well, you disowned Farrakhan. You're both black."
Yeah.
That is absolutely insane. And so not only that, but when you've been attacked because of your religion, very much so like black people have been attacked because of their race, like Muslims have been attacked for being Muslim, like Jewish people have been attacked for being Jewish. will you defend yourself against this stereotype?
Yeah.
Like, that's what they're asking her.
Yeah.
Over and over and over and over again. And after a while, you just are like, what the fuck? Why do I have to? And you don't want to give credence to it. But I told her, like, then you need to say that.
Yeah.
Like, and I get you don't want it because she does not want to make herself the victim.
Yeah.
She said that
I applaud that. I applaud that. I do. But at some point, she's gonna have to be like, dude, why are you only going after me with this? And why am I the only one that's been questioned about it? Like, there's plenty of other people that have associations with people from their religion or spiritual side, but they don't get asked those questions, and I'm just being hounded with it.
Here's what's even more interesting. There's actually only one person in this race who openly endorsed Modi. And it's actually the woman who's actually Indian.
Yeah.
It's Kamala.
Yeah.
She loves Modi.
Really? Like, I didn't know that. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah. One of my people story, Fiorella broke it. She was like, go look at all these tweets. Look like she loves Modi. She actually has stronger ties to Modi and India than Tulsi does. Tulsi went on a fact-finding mission not because she's Hindu, but because her mom's white. So it's not like she's Indian herself.
She's
like her mom is Hindu. That's where her dad, the Polynesian one, you would think is the one. I know it's weird, right? You would think her mom or her dad is the one who is Indian because of the last name, but no, he's Polynesian and he's Christian. Her mom is white and is Hindu. So like she didn't have any legitimate ties to India. But Kamala's aunt travels back and forth from India to help campaign for her. That's the only side of her family that she's identified with openly until very recently when she tried to take advantage of the black vote.
Yeah. Because she's like, all of a sudden, she's like fully black right now.
All of a sudden, right? All of a sudden, she don't talk about being Indian anymore. and she, like, I mean, when I tell you she loves Modi, bro, loves Modi.
Interesting. I did not know that.
All of a sudden, that's not an issue for Kamala, though. And people, I can't, like I said, Modi, I think of Modi like I think of Putin, like I think of Obama, like I think of everybody else. He might be bad, but he ain't as bad as every other leader in this world. Every other world leader is probably just as bad as he is, because that's what happens when you get power. Like and they might do a few good things, but that doesn't mean that we should be focusing on Modi, and we shouldn't be questioning and scrutinizing this idea that all of a sudden we should care about Indian politics in the States. Not saying that we shouldn't, but like the reality of the situation is,
point you're making,
most of the country had no idea who the fuck Modi was until January when Tulsi Gabbard announced. That was when. And the truth is she needs to address it, and I think she needs to address it just because I think she needs to expose the hypocrisy. Because even when Ilhan Omar was going through what she was going through, there were people saying, when is Tulsi going to speak out against Ilhan or speak out for Ilhan, even though she had already done so, first of all, multiple times. When is she going to speak out for Ilhan? And why? Because she's Hindu. So what did that mean? Oh, she must be against Muslims. Because why? Because that's what Hindu nationalists. So it was like a chain of logic that led up to when is she going to speak out to get Ilhan. But when have you ever heard anyone ask, when is Ilhan going to speak up for Tulsi?
Yeah, exactly.
When is Bernie going to speak for Tulsi? Right. Because it's not the Democratic Party consensus. You can't defend her. You all know where her heart is.
Right.
You all know why she went. She went as a member of the Committee of Foreign Affairs.
Right.
So because she went to go visit us, isn't it interesting how the narrative changes? Because it's all for the same reason. She visits these places all for the same reasons. And she always meets with both the leaders and the opposition.
Right.
So when she went to go visit Modi,
the opposition in India too.
Exactly. And when she went to go visit Modi, because she's a Hindu nationalist. When she goes to visit Assad, it's because she's
an Assad party, remember?
An Assad apologist.
Yeah.
Like, so basically, if she went to go visit Maduro, it's because she's a dirty socialist. Like, literally, the narrative would change every single time, and it wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
I wonder how many times it's going to have to change for people to realize, why does the narrative, the only one who doesn't change their narrative about the reason that it's happening is Tulsi.
Right.
And it's because I would rather have peace than a nuclear holocaust.
Yeah, I find the idea of, no, we shouldn't talk to people that we don't like. I find that whole idea very strange. You know, I don't get it. So what do you see like in the upcoming debates? Because I believe she's qualified to be on the stage for the debate.
She's good.
And Do you have any predictions for how the debates are going to go?
I think Tulsi's going to mop the floor with
You
everybody.
really think so?
Oh yeah. Listen, I've talked with her one on one multiple times at this point. I'm close with her family.
Yeah.
It's when there's certain people that you meet in life that, like, so for Bernie, I love Bernie.
Right.
Bernie has been on the right side of the issues for the most part for his entire life.
Right.
That's a good thing. He had the abundantly available education, great parents to help guide him to the right direction, great people around him to guide him in the right direction. Has always had conscious people, and it was popular in his microcosm and in his environment to be on that level of quote unquote democratic socialism. However, totally different. Tulsi grew up being Hindu and being a Christian simultaneously.
Right.
She grew up in a very socially conservative house. Her dad was a Republican. Her dad was anti-gay marriage. Her friends and family, same thing. Actually, and believe it or not, that's like most of America. She grew up, went to the military on the belief that 9/11 led to Iraq and Afghanistan, that we should have been there, and she eventually owned up saying that was a lie. We were lied to, and that's why I joined. So she had everything. Vice chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee, spoke at the 2012 Democratic National Convention because she was up next. They were going to hand her the nomination after Hillary finished. Wow. Because the one thing that they knew America could not resist was a gorgeous Democratic veteran.
Yeah,
they knew.
I mean, that's a pretty killer combo.
Exactly. And so she had all of this adversity, was taught the wrong thing for a very long time, had everything on a platter in front of her. And for the first time in the history of politics, we saw someone have everything in front of them and say, I don't want that shit. I want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So that means she knows every argument you're going to make.
Yeah, that's true.
She knows every argument you're going to make and then some, and you can't trick her up. There's nothing that you can do. Well, cause like, how do we know you're going to be, loyal to the progressive, even for progressive? I literally left the DNC and looked in front of a camera and said, I'm not scared of the Clintons.
Wow.
Nobody else has said that. They all endorsed her.
Yeah.
The most unpopular candidate in the country they endorsed, where Tulsi did what the people said. They did and who do you think is going to determine the outcome of this election? The mainstream? No. The Rogan supporters, the Niko supporters, the Jimmy Dore supporters.
Right.
Those people determine the outcome of the election.
Right.
And those people are the organizers, the people on the ground who influence and teach others the truth. And at the end of the day, the Democrats aren't going to claim she won. Of course, why would they? They didn't. They literally said Hillary Clinton won every debate against Bernie. No, it wasn't even close.
No, it wasn't.
However, when the Republicans watch those debates, and they will, because it's a damn, it's like WWE at times.
Yeah.
We have 30 to 35 semi-open or open primary states where they don't have another option in the Republican primary.
Yep.
It's just Trump. A lot of them don't like him anymore.
Yep.
So they're going to choose someone who they haven't deemed as a Democratic socialist, or they're going to choose the one person on the entire debate stage that didn't endorse Hillary. At the bare minimum, who is standing up for herself, who actually looks like a fighter, everything that they thought Trump was. The one who's been victimized. Because remember, and it's ironic that Trump laid out this foundation, this blueprint that nobody ever thought would be useful again, except for that's the exact blueprint Tulsi is using right now. Okay, attack me. I don't care. You can attack me from the left. You can attack me from the right. You're going to create a victim out of this. I mean, when I say she's gorgeous, I mean she's objectively beautiful, and that's how America is just conditioned to listen to objectively beautiful people. Like, it's just kind of how it is, right?
Isn't everyone?
That's the truth. You're right. And so when you have someone who is objectively beautiful and she is a fighter, these are the same people who believe Candace Owens. Right? They're like, she's so smart.
There was actually a question about her that some people were asking me. That what does Niko feel about this whole Candace Owens thing and her popularity in Republican circles and her whole Blexit movement, apparently, where she claims that black people are going to be voting Republican in huge numbers because they're so sick of the Democrats.
if they're voting Republican in huge numbers, then that's not a Brexit movement. What she is asking the black people to do is leave the house to go work in the fields. Come on. It's fine. I mean, I'm gonna still be up here on this porch though. I'm gonna be in the house still. But y'all come over on, like, that's what she's at. She is paid by the Koch brothers. She was paid by Turning Point USA. And it's interesting because she just had her account suspended because TPUSA is like establishment funded. Therefore, they were able to get away with a lot on Facebook and Twitter. But the moment that Candace left them, she no longer was backed by an establishment affiliated group. And they blocked her on Twitter or Facebook for saying the exact same things that she has always been saying. Interesting. Yeah. So that's their propaganda arm. Yeah. So like, she was a director of urban affairs. They have another girl I think named Paulina who's like for immigration. Like she's a tool as well. Like she's gorgeous as well. Like, but it's the same thing over. And it's crazy because it's like having that one black friend. Like, bro, you just hired one black person to deal with urban affairs, one Latina to deal with immigration, and everybody, and all they do is tell white people everything you think about my group of people are correct. Love it. Like, that's how you get. They're not smart. Candace Owens constantly backs out of debates. Notice that the only one who was kind of debate is Charlie Kirk because he's the most savvy in his bullshit. But all of his other members won't debate. But my point is that with Tulsi, there is just something about her that if you were in the same room as her, if you watch her speak for an extended period of time, like if you go to her Joe Rogan, there's not one single negative comment about her. And we all know the crazy people that watch Joe Rogan's show. Oh, yeah. This crazy comment section, not one negative comment. Go to the Fox News comments, not one. Go to CNN, not one. Even on there may be like a few sprinkled in, but you could tell they're just bots because I'm sure can attest to this. People think that bots are bad on Twitter. You think bots are bad on Facebook. YouTube bots are infinitely worse, and it's so obvious. Like, everybody who talks shit about immigration happens to have a Latino name as their username. Interesting. It's weird. It's the weirdest shit ever. Yeah. But so when they're forced to, they're going to try to drown her out. But I don't know if you've also noticed this. Tulsi ain't about that shit. If you try to cut her off when she's talking, she's going to make sure she finishes her sentence. Like, that's because that's just who she is. Yeah. And when they see her at that debate, I can guarantee. I told people yesterday, I said on it was May 18th, I said May 18th, 7:18 p.m. I'm telling you all, mark this day down. She will be the #1 trending topic on Google during that first debate. Guaranteed. Because they were surprised about Bernie. Like, they were surprised about Bernie, and all he was saying was, but basic common sense. Yeah, Medicare for all is great. We should have a living wage. So what are you going to think about somebody? We need Medicare for all. We need living wages. And I know how to make it happen. These are the people who are responsible. X, Y, and Z. They're saying Trump is bad because of Russiagate, but they all profited off of it. No, here's why Trump is actually bad, because he's friends with Saudi Arabia, the ones who were actually responsible for 9/11. Yeah. When she starts telling the truth in the way that she has grown so accustomed to doing, I just feel like once it gets to a point where objectively you're like, man, I know because it's hard to break away from that. Yeah. I don't call it a cult, but like you've developed. It's like being a racist when it comes to being a Bernie supporter. It's like being a racist growing up in Alabama. I don't really agree with them, but my mom is a racist, my dad is a racist, my friends are racist, my teacher is racist, my church is racist. If I pull away and speak out against that, then I'm gonna lose everything that I've built for my entire life. There are a lot of people who gain friends, followings, YouTube followings off of supporting Bernie exclusively. And if they break away from that, they're worried that they will be ostracized by that particular movement rather than just doing what's objectively the right thing to do. But after a while, bro, you just listen to Tulsi and you see, I'm sure you see the transition on YouTube. At first it was, who's Tulsi? I don't think she has a chance to win. Like, now I'm in give a shit. I'm voting for her. Yeah. Like it's getting to that point on YouTube. Yeah. So imagine what happens when the rest of the world hears about this woman who's left to do the right thing.
That's true. That's a good point. All right, before we wrap up, Niko, is it all right if we take a couple of questions from the audience?
Of course, yeah.
Okay,
definitely.
Cool. So there's Ishant who's asking, ask Niko why Bernie was supporting the insurgency in the Caucasian region. It was said by somebody called Scott Ritter. Do you know anything about that?
The Caucasus Mountains, like that region?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Oh, I think we actually talked about that. The undercover insurgency that he voted for.
Right.
I don't know. I don't agree with it. I said that he's susceptible to the intelligence community, and I don't. That's his biggest blind spot on foreign policy or in politics in general.
Right.
And he admitted that he was weak on foreign policy 2 weeks ago.
Oh wow.
He admitted it, on TV, in the CNN interview, or at the CNN town hall.
Yeah. There was another question that was asking if Modi wins, because the elections have just concluded and the results are going to be out on the 23rd of May. So if Modi wins again and he comes back to power again, do you think that rhetoric is just going to double against Tulsi?
Yes, but I'm going to be realistic and be honest with you all. I've been living in America for 30 years. A lot of white people in America, a lot of black people too, a lot of Latinos. And to be quite honest with you, they don't give a shit about Indian politics. It will have zero effect on that. And I'm like, it's not like they should. We should care about politics all over the world, especially with an ally as close to India. But like, if the Democratic thing about this, they've literally unloaded they unloaded all their ammo. They've played all their cards. Yeah. And if your biggest critique of Tulsi is she's associated with RSS, you know what my friends are gonna say? Was that a rap group? Is that like the new rap group? Who's in it? I haven't heard them. You got a YouTube link? You got a Spotify? Can I get a mixtape? Like, that's what they're going to say, because they don't know the hell RSS is. They don't know who BJP is, and they don't know who Modi is, and they're not going to be like. And then the worst part is, it's counterintuitive, right? Because you're like, oh, well, we would care about that, except for we've also been conditioned to be Islamophobic. Well, what's Modi doing? Well, he's supposedly targeting Muslims. Well, shit, what's the problem with that? I thought they were the enemy. That's it's like it's unfortunate, but it's the truth. Trying to say that you care about Muslims is not going, and that's why we shouldn't like this leader, and that's why we shouldn't vote for Bernie. It doesn't reverse engineer correctly, because we've been already inherently conditioned to dislike or believe that Muslims are guilty until proven innocent. So it's not going to work. So like, they can double down, and then people are still going to be like, okay, and even if they believed it, they're going to like, hold up, but does she still, it's the same thing like with Bernie supporters. Yeah, Bernie was silent on Julian Assange. He was silent on Venezuela. He was silent on Syria. He voted for some wars. He used to be a Zionist, he endorsed Hillary Clinton, but is he going to give me health care? Well, I don't give a shit about all them then. I need some health care. That's just kind of how it goes. And so when she's able to correctly link how foreign policy affects all the domestic policies that she and Bernie wants, that's going to give her the leg up, and that in the politics of India are not going to affect our elections any more than the politics of Canada. And they're right up the street.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's going to be interesting to see that if she does, sort of blow up the way you're saying after the debates, then what is going to be the media's reaction to it? That's going to be interesting to see as well. Are they going to, because you're saying, the people don't really care about what's happening in India, because they care about what's happening in America and what's happening in their lives, which is a fair point. But is the media going to make it all about that? That's going to be very interesting to see.
They will. They will for a week after they realize that there's literally, the thing about it, the whole Hindu nationalism thing hasn't even really been a topic of conversation as of, like, it died. They're now trying to focus on the Russiagate angle again. Yeah. So like, because she said, if our president wasn't caught colluding with Russia, that's actually a good thing. I don't know why we think that's a bad thing. And
I know, right?
I would really like to move on.
Everybody was so upset when they said there's no collusion.
I can't believe it ain't collusion.
Why are you upset about that, dude?
What? Well, I was happy as hell. I'm like, oh my God, thank Jesus this man wasn't working with the president. Because now I got to go back and erase about 150 videos. But like, no, in all seriousness, it's crazy because even with the Russiagate thing, it's like, hold on. Because I don't know if you read that Daily Beast hit piece on her, which was, it read like an Onion article. It was hilarious. They were like, my friend Lee Camp from Redacted Tonight, they said that somebody from his show donated to Tulsi. It wasn't even a lot. Somebody from his show donated. So he said, well, even though Lee Camp wasn't the one who donated, Lee Camp runs the show, and he hasn't really said anything positive about Putin, but he does back all the Russian narratives. Right. Okay, I was like, on what? He wants to stay out of Venezuela. He wants to stay out of Syria, and he doesn't want to go to war with Iran. Like, I don't think those are Russian narrative. I think those are I don't want to go to war narrative. Yeah. But like, these were the arguments that they were using to present. I'm like, wow, so this is where we're at. We're so what they're saying is maybe so if you say maybe we should de-escalate tensions with Russia, that means you're pro-Russian. Yeah. But the alternative is let's not de-escalate and potentially go to a nuclear war.
Yeah, it's like a weird thing, right? It's like if a serial killer said one day that you should always brush your teeth twice a day. That means you'll stop brushing your teeth because a serial killer said that you should brush your teeth. It's kind of like that. You know what I mean? Like just because a bad person said a good thing doesn't mean doesn't make the good thing bad. The good thing is still a good thing.
Exactly.
So that's just a weird thing that people say that I don't understand. There's another
Well,
one.
it's what we've always used. Like I said, with the Germany situation. Like I said, well, I was telling you about World War One. Everything Germany did was bad. Well, what if it isn't? That I feel like that I don't want to go to war. Oh, you don't want to go to war? Oh, so you're pro-Germany is what you're saying. Oh, you know you gonna let the communists win is what you're saying. Okay, didn't know that. Well, I don't want to die. That's pretty selfish. Okay, now you're a selfish politician. Like there's no victory when they pegged you as the enemy. There is no victory, especially when they're in the middle of trying to manufacture World War III.
Yeah, for sure. Here's one quick one from Scar Moon on Twitter. He's asking, Tulsi Gabbard talks about denuclearization of North Korea, but not Pakistan. Pakistan doesn't have any not first use clause for nuclear weapons. She calls Saudis the exporter of terrorist ideology, but doesn't call out Pakistan, which harbors so many terrorists and actively sponsors terrorist activities around the globe. So do you think that's a problem?
Oh yeah, it is actually. It's a problem that I've actually talked to her about. And it's not necessarily because she like defends Pakistan, but that was just not her area of expertise. Because in the States, we are there's like a purposeful blind spot to Pakistan, in the same way that we didn't know anything about Yemen. Like the majority of the country didn't know anything about Yemen until recently. It's because if we found out, then we might sympathize and then we would care about what's happening with Saudi Arabia and Yemen. Same thing. We found out what's going on in Pakistan. We might get angry and find out what's happening there. So we've talked about it, and she's mentioned it in a couple of interviews. But I do agree that's something that she needs to go into more detail on. But she doesn't talk about things she's not educated on enough yet. Sure. And I think that when you really think about it, she's educated on so much that I expect her to, when it comes to Pakistan, once she gets the facts, because of how consistent she is on everything else, she's going to get it right. But I think that it's like I don't think it's asking for too much, but I am sympathetic to the idea she literally in an interview, they already said she talks about foreign policy too much, it's as it is. So it's like she has to add another layer to that. And once again, the truth of the matter is, because Pakistan is not something that is talked about a lot in the American mainstream or even in the independent media, when she talks about it, it's not going to resonate to a point where it will get her in office.
Yeah. Whereas I feel like Saudi Arabia will resonate more.
Saudi Arabia, Iran, Syria.
It's a lot closer to home. Yeah.
Which is why she focuses on it. She doesn't even talk about all the other places she's visited as a foreign, because we don't hear about them enough.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't.
And the media doesn't talk about them enough either.
Exactly. So I wouldn't even say that she's not educated on Pakistan, because we actually had an extensive dialogue about it. I was sending her information, and I said, we need to be suspicious of these attacks in Pakistan, or in Kashmir, not because Pakistan is innocent necessarily or because they're guilty, but because there's definitely something bigger at play when they just go out of their way to attack a country that they know could, honestly, India might be able to just straight obliterate Pakistan.
No, it would be, but the issue now is that Pakistan is a nuclear country. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. Then they spend, and what's funny is that they don't have enough money to feed their people, but they're spending billions of dollars in developing nuclear weapons, and that is not a problem for just India.
Because Pakistan has been a problem. That would be the best way to convince India to let us establish a stronger military presence in India to attack Pakistan and take over their infrastructure and put our people back in power. Yeah. So and that's something that's the playbook. And that's why I said, be careful, because we knew exactly who committed the attack. The moment it happened, it wasn't even a 24-hour turnover. And these terrorist organizations that we helped to put in Pakistan was responsible for the attack in Kashmir, and probably didn't do it on behalf of Pakistan. They probably do it because we fucking told them to. Because it doesn't make any strategic sense to do that. What were they hoping to achieve?
Right. Well, that's the problem. what Pakistan is hoping to achieve is not any resolution to anything. What Pakistan is hoping to achieve is instability, because instability favors the Pakistani establishment. As long as Afghanistan is unstable, as long as the Kashmir area is unstable, it benefits Pakistan, because Pakistani army can tell its people that, look, it's because of us that Afghanistan is scared of us, and Kashmir is scared of us, and we are the only ones that can control you. We are the only ones that can control this instability. Because what do these establishment, like we were talking about the American politicians who go and make all those places unstable, why do they keep them unstable? Because solving problems is not as good as keeping problems alive, so that you can tell people that I'm going to solve that problem.
Yep, exactly. Literally, look at Libya.
Yep.
People think that they're like, I can't see, this is what happened. We killed Gaddafi and we accidentally enabled slavery in Libya. And I'm like, oh, y'all think that was accidental?
Yeah.
No, that was a problem, because people don't know about that story, like how it really unfolded. So Gaddafi was actually the elected chairman of the African Union. Africa loved that man. They loved Gaddafi, and a lot of the Middle Eastern countries did as well. And I don't know one way or another, but I don't know him personally. Me and his kids didn't hang out when we were in high school or something like that. Like, I don't know him well enough to make a character judgment. But I know, as far as his policies and the way he was handling business, the entire continent of Africa that had a union where they democratically elected chairman said Gaddafi is the guy. So he agreed at that union, like at one of their meetings, you know what, if it means getting the United States out of Africa, not just Libya, but out of Africa, I love my continent so much that I will step down, and we will make sure our democratically elected election takes place. Our democratically elected official takes my place. This, which once again, denuclearized, then he stepped down. The problem was, oh yeah, you know what that means? That means stability. Can't have that. 3-4 months later, he was gone. Yeah. They went into hyperdrive to kill that man. Because if you allow a democratically elected leader to take his place, and then the news gets wind that, oh man, he was stepping down.
Yeah.
Wow. Like, he really does care about the entire narrative of Gaddafi changes.
Yeah, that is an interesting one about they need to stop with that instability. That's just money down the toilet, and I hope somebody can really openly talk about it on the debate stage in front of like the American people, and I think that kind of a conversation can only lead to healthy outcomes. Let's take one more. Here's from Yaboku, and this is an interesting one because he's asking about ask Niko if he can give some details about the OFF Act that Tulsi Gabbard has been championing. And because Ocasio-Cortez has been talking about the new Green Deal, and
that piece of shit.
She's been pushing that quite hard, but for some reason they're not, I feel like they're on a similar page, Ocasio-Cortez and Tulsi, in terms of saving the environment, or at least trying to work out something to save the environment. But a lot of the establishment politicians are not taking the OFF Act into account. So give us a couple of details about the OFF Act, and then why is it not being taken into account as much?
So let me just say this. So you see how the media is championing the Green New Deal. You see establishment politicians are cheering AOC on with the Green New Deal, making headlines and all that good stuff. Yeah. The Green New Deal hasn't even been passed. Like, it wasn't even passed as a resolution. And I don't think that people realize that. But even if it got passed, it would literally be only a resolution, which means it's not actionable. The other problem is it doesn't deal with nuclear power, more specifically nuclear waste. If you live in California, you've seen cancer rates rise exponentially because of Fukushima. The fish are dying exponentially because of Fukushima nuclear waste. So it doesn't deal with that. It doesn't ban fracking, even though fracking is destroying the environment, right? So you can say, oh, we're dealing with climate change, but are you going to ban fracking? No, because they use these very loose terms, right? Like net zero emissions. What the hell does that mean? Because you can still be technically using fossil fuels and reach a net zero emission. You get what I'm saying? Like, because that's just how math and rhetoric works. If you say net zero, so why don't you just say off of fossil fuels if that's what you intend on doing? Because that's not what she intends on doing. Like, it seems to, and then what it was even more interesting is I'm sure recently you saw they passed that they're trying to get some legislation passed that would try and get the America to convert strictly to electric vehicles and by 2045, which is already way too late. But once again, it said not get off of fossil fuels, but convert to electric vehicles. Because there's a good chance, because of the man who's primarily behind it, which is Zach Levin, that they're planning on using these fuel cells. Because, well, this guy was a lobbyist for the fuel cell industry, and he's in charge of their government outreach program now. The guy who's in charge of this legislation that all of a sudden Ocasio endorses, and this legislation was also sponsored by Bernie, but also Kamala Harris and Kirsten Gillibrand. So if Kamala and Kirsten, their donors, are okay with this legislation, how good do you think it really is? And what's even more interesting is that this isn't the first time that Tulsi is going to introduce the OFF Act. It was first introduced in 2017. And interestingly enough, AOC campaigned on it. Yeah. She campaigned on this OFF Act, knew how great it was. And she's in the climate change committee, so she knows that it's about to get reintroduced again. There's no way she doesn't. That's just not how politics works. And yet, she hasn't. Think about it. I would be less disheartened if she just hadn't said anything about the OFF Act, but had mentioned Tulsi's name at some point, if at all. Yeah. She literally has not said Tulsi's name at all. And she said Warren's name a lot. Way more. Boosts her on Twitter, talks about her in interviews. So and once again, it goes back to what I said earlier. Warren's not a threat to Bernie. Warren's not a threat to become the first woman president. Warren is not a threat to the dynasty or the brand of AOC. Tulsi is. Tulsi is in line to be the first female president. And ironically enough, Tulsi is looking like if she wins, she will be the best president of any country in the history of the world. And that is not hyperbole. When you have someone who has such a grasp on domestic policy and on foreign policy, has the experience of somebody who's 50, but the youth and the understanding and the evolution of the millennial, because she would be the first millennial president. A lot of people don't know that because she's only 38. So she's the last year of the millennial, which is pretty emblematic of what millennialism has been, which is like kind of growing through an evolution and breaking off of that almost institutionalized conditioning that our parents went through and their parents went through, and to the point where we're not educating our parents on and waking them up. So like Tulsi has that. And the OFF Act is another notch in her legacy. The Securing America's Elections Act, which AOC also has not discussed. Neither has any other major progressive figure. Tulsi is out. When we're talking about progressives, yeah, they're all progressives. We can say that. Tulsi's beyond progressive at this point. She is setting the bar so high that everyone whose ego is involved, everyone not necessarily making decisions for the right reasons, but doing it because it looks good, they've been silent. So when we look at the OFF Act, so it would be it's called the Off Fossil Fuels Act, and it's 100% renewable energy by 2035. And that was then. So it was 2017 when it was first introduced. And there would be an interim benchmark. So halfway through, she plans on already being at 80% renewable energy by 2027. It removes tax giveaways for the oil industry and provides transition assistance for the workers through the Center for Clean Energy and Workforce. So she already has programs detailed in the bill to transition people, whereas AOC's resolution talks about doing it, but it doesn't really have a plan. This is necessary to complete whatever the framework she believes that Green New Deal is supposed to have. She hasn't talked about it at all. So it will the development will basically move completely away from a fossil fuel economy to a strictly clean energy economy with no room for interpretation there. Right. That's what we want. It also acknowledges the consequences of climate change that have already disproportionately affects minority and tribal communities. Isn't that interesting? Because the Green New Deal talks about how minorities are affected by climate change. So it's almost as if she took some of the best parts of this legislation, called it the Green New Deal, so some independents would jump on board with her too, because we all associate that with Jill Stein, and then watered the rest of it down, and then took all the credit for it. without having to really do work, bro. I could have come up with that. I could have come up with that in my room with 3 hours in WordPress or a Word document. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's also, so she also goes on to talk about there's geographic vulnerability. She talks about the need for energy scrutiny, right? So not just assuming because you say electric cars, is all electricity in the way that it's created good? No, it is not. It says, so in recognizing the risks posed by continuing our reliance on fossil fuels and moving to address them, Hawaii has seen a boom in solar energy and other renewable sources that allow our citizens greater energy independence while advancing new technologies and creating sustainable jobs. So not only, like, because this is different from AOC, so not only does she have the legislation, but she has the experience to see it through and to talk about how it's already worked for her state, right, with tangible statistics. All of this, if you're AOC and you're worried about like achieving the goal, how are you not? Like, I couldn't, bro, I'm like almost addicted to talking about this legislation. Right. Because I'm like, what else is there to discuss? If AOC and Bernie and all the damn Democrats pretend like climate change is the most, because that's what they've been talking about. Climate change is the most pertinent thing to deal with. And I think that's actually the environment's more pertinent, and those are two separate things. I think climate change is more cyclical. According to a lot of the academics I've talked to, climate change is worsened by human interaction, but it's going to happen. So we need to be preventative. But the environment, nah, it'll kill us before climate change does. Yeah. Like, and that's something that the legislation needs to address. People in West Virginia and Michigan, and a lot of these states, they're suffering from fracking right now. Not climate change necessarily. Going to clean energy stops the problems that are already hurting people. Right. So how was the Democratic Party not obsessed with this legislation if climate change and the environment is as pertinent to be addressed?
To them as they say, right?
400 environmental and climate change activism groups endorsed this legislation. 400. Wow. None of those have endorsed the Green New Deal.
That's the kind of stuff that's going to be very interesting to see in the next few weeks, and come June, once they're all up on the stage, and once this, if you're pretty confident that she'll get a lot of traction out of those debates, and if that actually does end up happening, it's going to be very interesting to see, if they actually try to focus on policies, how they attack her. I maintain again that this whole, in case Modi ends up winning again, and in case Tulsi Gabbard starts to get her name out there after the elections, they're going to start to go after her in a big way with that whole Hindu nationalism thing. So I think that's something that will need to be cleared up a lot more in the future as well. Again, I've done videos about this. If people are watching, they can go check those out. But we'll have discussions about that in the future as those.
Yeah, that's how I got educated on Modi. I watched your video. It came up, suggested in my feed, right. And I saw it. I was like, okay, I might check that out later. And then like 3 or 4 of my supporters actually sent me your video. They're like, man, you should watch this. I learned so much from this video, and I did. I learned that the Indian media is no different than ours.
Yeah, pretty much. And they follow the American example really well. Basically, is what they do. Yeah, it's nothing new that they're doing.
Exactly. And I figured that from the beginning, which is why I was always hesitant to be like, I'm not going to qualify him as some Hindu nationalist. I don't know him. I don't know enough about him, and neither do Americans, neither do damn sure journalists don't. So why are we using that qualifier? Well, New York Times said, and that's the problem. America, you have to understand, because we are, even if it's nominally and not technically, we're a Christian nation. We're a nation not of the New Testament, but of the Old Testament, unfortunately. And because of that, and we focus on the Old Testament for a reason. We believe in this thing called blind faith and appeal to authority. Even though it's the biggest logical fallacy that you can have, we do that. And that's why Republicans love it, right? Because who do we install whenever we overthrow democratically elected leaders? Right-wing theocratic dictators. Why do you believe in them? Why should you? Blind faith. That's the Bible said I have to believe in the authorities that are in charge of me. I have to believe in my master. I have to trust in my master. So like, that's the Old Testament that they push. Ironically enough, even though I'm not a religious Christian, I'm a Christian only in the strictest sense. Like I try to be Christ-like in my philosophy. Jesus, if we were a real Christian country, Jesus didn't say, believe me, I'm the son of God. He was like, oh, you don't believe me, bitch? Hey, bring that water over here real quick. Wine? What's good? Oh, you don't believe me? Bring that over here too. Bread.
Bread.
Like, it was not. It was a show and prove.
Yeah.
So they don't talk about that part a lot.
Yeah.
Because that's what being a true Christian would be. But they invest in the blind faith aspect, so people believe authority figures. They believe the New York Times. Why? Because they said that's who we're supposed to believe. Washington Post. Why? They said that's who. The CIA. Why? Because that's their intelligence.
Yeah.
This is their name, intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, it's gonna be something interesting to explore as well. It's gonna be interesting to explore even the right wing and left wing definitions and how you apply those to India, because they say Modi is a right wing nationalist. There is no such thing as a right wing in India. Literally every single policy of dude. If you look at Modi's policies, one of my friends, Kushal Mehra, he's an Indian podcaster. He actually did a really funny thing on his podcast where he got a couple of people on and he said, "I'm gonna give you a policy. I'm not going to tell you what the name of the policy is. I'm just going to explain this policy to you. You tell me if this is a right-wing policy or if this is a policy that would be endorsed by somebody like Bernie Sanders." So so Modi has a policy called Ayushman Bharat, which essentially is India's version of Medicare for all. It's a Modi policy. Modi brought that policy in. He's got financial inclusion policies. He's got policies that...
he had a lot of progressive policies.
Yeah, a lot of progressive policies. So India doesn't really have a... Oops, hello, cat. India doesn't really have a progressive policy. Oh, sorry,
I'm the man at the door. I'm the man at the door, too.
Yeah, so India doesn't even have a right wing, really, economically. There is no Republican equivalent in India at all. The BJP is culturally maybe conservative, but economically, there's nothing right-wing about the BJP at all. Like if you even go look at the BJP's website and look at their manifesto for the 2019 elections, it'll blow your mind as to, this is a socialist party or what's going on here?
Yeah. So basically it's just like, which I believe, because like in America, unfortunately, we don't really have a left-wing party, right? So in the same way that y'all don't have a right-wing party, we don't have a real left-wing party.
Exactly.
We have identitarians.
Right.
Like, and that's what they try to protect. And I could see that being the same thing in India. And like, that could be problematic, but it doesn't mean that the leader himself, because he has an identity that, or his background is one thing, doesn't necessarily mean that because something bad happened to Muslims from Hindus that he advocates for it. Yeah. I'm sure if something happened like with that incident, I don't know where it was at, but they said that he advocated for it. I'm like, I guarantee if I go look up, I would not be able to find one speech where he didn't condemn it.
Yeah, no,
probably
there
didn't,
isn't.
right?
There isn't.
He condemned it, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not enough. Like, we can't even get that from Trump.
Yeah.
Trump over here, there were fine people.
Fine people on both sides. Right. He immediately condemns it. The Supreme Court looked into the matter. The Supreme Court of India looked into the matter, and the Supreme Court of India came back and said there is absolutely no evidence that this man encouraged it or advocated for it. So it's either you listen, you looked at it from a journalistic perspective, you looked at it from a legal perspective, and you still say, okay, we're just not going to believe it. Or, well, that's up to you. Fine.
And is that true? I heard the Supreme Court is actually not like pro Modi. I heard it's like the leans against Modi.
It does, particularly because of the judges that were appointed. They were appointed usually by the other party.
So basically, the people who by their argument, they're like, the Supreme Court exonerated him, and they're supposedly they're like from the other party. Then it logically doesn't make sense because they're like, well, it's his Supreme Court. I'm like, but if his Supreme Court works like ours, they're not his people.
Yeah, it's not. So that's going to become more and more clear as Tulsi gains more relevance in American politics, I believe, and I think if you are in touch with her, that will be something very interesting for her to kind of work on, because they're going to come for her. They're going to come for her from that angle for sure, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah. So, I think that we shouldn't be lying on politicians. Like, you don't have to say he's altruistic. You don't have to say he's great. You don't have to say that. You just like, we should not be spreading verifiable lies.
That's true.
Like, because it's attempts to manufacture consent, because God forbid, like, because, for a while, America has been pretty close with Modi, like our politicians have, which that's the thing that actually bothered me about Modi. It wasn't actually, but I understand, like, you don't want to piss off America because then you're gone. Like, you might literally be dead. But if Modi begins to, like, say, you know what, I just can't be associated with these people. Like, because it could get to that point where, because now that Kashmir was attacked, it's clear that, like, America and the affiliation to America is now becoming dangerous because of India's weird relationship with Pakistan. And so he might start distancing himself, right? And that could become problematic. And then you might see attempts to manufacture consent.
Right.
And so we have to know that we cannot allow lies to persist, because especially not because you may not love Modi as a person, but because of what comes next.
Yeah.
It can mean an innocent man has his life taken from him.
Yeah.
It can mean that India is thrown into chaos and then America comes in and installs a dictator there in some way, form, or fashion. Like, it could be very problematic. So I agree, and I would love to see her work. And I'll talk to her about it. I'll talk to her about that, because
I think that'll be something to definitely watch out for.
And I learned something new today. I just learned a lot of new stuff about Modi today, so I appreciate it.
And no, we'll in the future also we'll have conversations about this as the elections progress. I think it'll be fun to talk to you again, and we'll talk about sort of these issues in depth. Today, I wanted to get more of an overview of what's going on in the U.S. and what are the recent rumblings in the U.S. politics and the 2020 elections, but. As these things become more relevant in the U.S. and the mainstream conversations, we'll try and talk about them a little more as well.
For sure.
Yeah. Again, man, thanks for doing this today. Thanks for coming on the show. I know I took up more time of yours than you probably anticipated.
Nah, man. I greatly appreciate having it on, man. I feel like I learned a lot. And anytime I get to talk about the facts, and not a lot of people that can talk about world politics. It's basically me just talking to myself usually. So, I'm telling you, out of the progressive YouTubers, there are about two or three of us that consistently post that understand international politics.
Right.
But most, even out of us three, it's not. They don't even understand it. Like in relation to like Pakistan and India, and how Pakistan's been harboring terrorists and how that narrative develops. And so like they don't even understand it in the terms of narratives as much as just the basic facts. So it's nice to be able to talk to somebody who understands how these narratives have developed.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And hopefully we'll do this again sometime. That'll be fun to do. It was really fun today.
I can't wait to have you on the show, man. I think a lot of people are going to appreciate being educated on the situation.
Yeah, let me know and I'll be there.
For sure. All
right, guys, thank you very much for sticking around and watching the show today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. I have Niko's channel in the description as well, so you can go check him out over there. He makes a lot of good content, so go take a look. This episode will be available as a podcast in the evening, so keep an eye out for that. I'll see you next time, and until then, stay happy, stay healthy. I'll see you guys soon.